So it's better to be safe and have it be nothing.
Yeah, I know that.
That's
And I saw that.
Okay, well,
Come on, Beach Bonanza, get going there.
and if they were on the phone or doing something, then usually
Rod's not
if
over
they close them
here.
behind them, they stop.
We don't have to excuse him. It's a workshop.
Behavior codes.
So it's not an official.
Yeah.
I was a passenger.
Jennifer, is the tape on?
Can I do everything?
No.
And they were.
It doesn't have like Flash Player, doesn't have, there's a lot of software, but there's an app for almost everything. Did you load that? Phil just loaded today, the Daily, it's from iPad. Oh my God, that is so awesome.
Yes, the app.
Like day one.
Have you really?
Yeah, I really.
I'm gonna have to come over sometime if you've got some time and look at all the apps.
Which iPhone do you have, the GS or the G? You don't know, okay, that's okay. How long have you had it?
I have the old one. I've had mine for over a year, probably
He was really worried about that.
year and a half.
Well, I've had mine for 2 years now.
One trick
And I think the 3GS came out in June.
Oh, I think I have just a 3G.
And then-
I don't
and then
think I have a
there was a
G.
full-
Yeah, I got 3G is what it says.
And so my question would be, why would you upgrade to a 3GS at $49, which is only like the next step up? If you have to sign another 2-year contract.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you wait until June.
Yeah.
It's polite on that?
Calling the meeting to order, gentlemen. Pardon me. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:31. Jennifer, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Coaston,
Here?
Councilmember Greenlee,
Here.
Councilmember Russell, Councilmember Delabarre,
Present.
Councilmember McDaniel,
Here.
Councilmember Morris, Councilmember Shoemaker,
Here.
and Mayor Guard is absent, and Councilmember Morris said that he would be absent as well.
That's correct. At this time in the meeting, I'd like to open it up for public comments. Do we have any comments from the public at this time?
That's us.
Yes, sir, that would be you.
You know, we're in the real estate business and trying to sell homes, especially open
Sir, if you
houses.
could just state your name for the record.
Sam Mitford, Harbor Bay Homes.
Mm-hmm.
I live here in West Sherville. And we're just, want to get our 2 cents in about being able to put signs up for open houses to help people sell their homes. And that, I guess there's a problem with it, the way it was set up, where you couldn't put them out on the intersections to lead people into where the homes are. What I'm understanding, but it's been going on for years and years. I've been working in a lot of different countries, or not countries, states. New Mexico is almost a different country, but and it doesn't seem to be a problem. And I hope we can work it out so we can use the signs, guide people into where the homes are open for sale.
Thank you.
And Rick works with
Yeah, I'll stand up too, I guess. My name is Rick Levitt. I live at 3545 P Loop. I'm also with Harbor Bay Homes. Sam is referring to is the A boards that we use. Current ordinance doesn't allow the A boards in a residential area. And it's just a tool that we use to, again, on weekends to have open houses. We'd like you to look at that particular part of that sign law. I think that, in my opinion, is they put restrictions on them that they must be removed and only be out there in the daylight hours, or something that restricts it to make sure that it is picked up would probably suffice for any safety reasons or anything like that. But it is the A board that really brings in our business, and they're temporary, and we've spent a lot of money on ours. I mean, they're really nice boards. And we would like you to look at that if you would, please reconsider it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please let the record show that Councilman Russell has just walked in and is president of the meeting. Moving on, agenda bill discussion and department head reports. Chief Schumacher.
Yeah, in order to expedite the workshop, and just let you know, we have an emergency operations center, and we have an emergency operation plan. That was supposed to be a joke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
every minute.
Yeah.
Excellent. Moving on. No, just kidding.
No, I just want to go through our emergency operation plan that we have for the city and to clarify some things. In the ordinance, municipal code, there is under 2.48 in the administrative code, talks about declaration of an emergency, and I just want to clarify that the mayor can declare an emergency, but it has to be approved by council. So if there's any questions on who can declare an emergency or declaration of emergency, the mayor can do that, but it has to be approved by council at the earliest convenience. What declares an emergency? From talking with the folks at Cressa, if you're going to break any laws, or if the purchasing power is going to change, then you ought to think about declaring an emergency. And then, so that's the difference between the declaration of emergency and who can declare it versus how do we open up the Emergency Operations Center. Now, the Emergency Operations Center can be opened up by anyone. It can be within the staff of the city. Our captain can open up request to open up the Emergency Operations Center. A council member can request to open up the Emergency Operating Center, or myself. So that would be the distinction between the declaration of an emergency and who can open up the Emergency Operations Center. We don't have to break any laws to open up the Emergency Operations Center. And our purchasing power doesn't have to change in order if we want to open up the Emergency Operations Center. Okay, questions regarding that?
Just one other circumstance in which you want to declare an emergency. If you have any hope of getting emergency funding back from FEMA, you need to have declared an emergency.
Yes.
I have a question. Do you find it inconsistent? I mean, I guess I'm confused about declaring an emergency. So if you actually really had a true emergency, you would have to convene a special council meeting in order to declare that?
Yes.
So that would have to be an emergency where all of the council members could actually physically come down to the city hall? I mean, so what if you had an emergency that disrupted?
The mayor can declare it, and as soon as possible, or as soon as he or she can get the council together to approve it and vote on it, and the council can vote, no, this is not an emergency.
And didn't we do this already with the radon thing? Did we declare emergency? And then we had to meet special to get
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think we've done that. We've already.
I'm just wondering, I guess if there were an emergency, say a major earthquake or something, that would be more of a regional emergency, not just ours, right?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I don't have any citation for this, but I think there might be two types of emergencies that we're talking about. There's the type of emergency where the council can enact an ordinance or some other action that takes effect immediately, and you have to make a certain declaration for that to happen. Otherwise, there's a statutory provision about when your actions take effect. And then there's the type of emergency where you need to suspend laws and to act quickly and decisively to buy stuff to do what you need to do. And I'm not sure if it's exactly the same thing, John, but it could be. It might have been. So, and then also when we seek to get reimbursed, often we ride under the umbrella of a higher governmental agency. It's preferable, in fact, if you can come under a governor's declaration of emergency and they name certain, then they'll do it. They can do it at a county-wide level. But yes, it is a necessary component to even be eligible for reimbursement.
And just to add a little bit, there is some RCW on this that talks about what happens if you can't get the council together. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it is there, and I remember reading it and saying, oh, that's pretty flexible.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just continue here. In the county, there's 3 emergency operations centers. We have one at the Washougal Fire Department, and that's a secondary one. There's one for what we call the East County, and that's at Station 42 in Camas at Grass Valley. And that's been changed from the police station in Camas to out there. And then there's Cressa. Cressa has their own EOC. And basically, if we determine that an emergency exists here and we have to open up all the Emergency Operations Center, we have to go ahead and utilize all our resources before we can contact Cressa and have them open up their EOC there. They're more than willing to help and come out here and to help us, but we have to go ahead and utilize all our resources before we can ask Cressa to come out. Now, if it's a countywide event, they're going to just be just as busy there as we are here, so we really can't totally rely on them if it's going to be a countywide event. Each of the Emergency Operations Center has data and phone terminals, the ability to cook, to house people 24/7. They also have emergency backup power as well. So there are some criteria that's necessary to be an Emergency Operations Center. All the chief officers in the county, we have our pager, we carry it with us, and we're notified anytime there's an emergency event. When the Washougal River gets to 12 feet, we receive that page. If there's any kind of disaster, we go ahead and we receive that page as well, so we're notified that way. Currently, right now, the director of the Emergency Operations Center for East County is the fire chief from Camas. So they're currently who has control over the Emergency Operations Center. Okay, we do have a comprehensive plan that's been developed and approved. This is our book here. And I carry it, all our books are in this tote. So if we get an event, we have to go to Grass Valley. Everything that we need is inside this tote here. So and all the officers know about it and where it's located and everything else. So we have lots of books here. And I just want to go over, the main book that we have is a Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. And that's for East County, Camas, and the City of Washougal. And in it, it outlines staffing. It outlines where everybody's going to sit. There's when we open up the EOC and all the divisions and who's going to be doing what. And it has all the duties as assigned. Typically, in an emergency operation, if we were to open it up, we'd have an operations section, a finance section, a logistics section, and a planning section. And so all that is spelled out in this book. So I'll go ahead and pass that around. In addition to that, in this book here we have, this is the Emergency Operations Center equipment. We also have a list of any equipment that we need, what resources that are out there. Port of Camas Washougal, what equipment they have. The Washougal School District, what equipment we can borrow from them, as well as City of Camas and City of Washougal's equipment that we can utilize. So we keep a resource list. If we need a backhoe or track hoe or whatever we need, then we have a resource list that we keep in this notebook. In addition to that, we have what's called GETS cards. Now these things, it's pretty neat that if all the phone systems go down and radios or whatever, or the cell phones are all tied up, we have direct access with our GETS card, and we can go ahead and utilize our cell phones. They prioritize our cell phones over anybody else's. So we carry that in this tote. As any government agency, you have to have forms. So we have a whole host of forms that we have here. Incident action plans, how we recoup money. So that's also in this tote. We have a response plan for terrorism that we keep inside the tote.
Now, Chief, is that aspect, is that part of the comprehensive plan? I think your staff are getting
That notebook is the same thing that you have there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
But I haven't gotten that far through it yet, but is it in this as well?
Terrorism?
Yeah.
No, that's pretty much just how it's going to operate and the duties and responsibilities. Okay, we have what's called the Clark County Fire Defense Manual, Anytime we have to do a mobilization of a fire apparatus anywhere in the state, then we follow this plan right here. All city personnel, if they've been with the organization, they're an FTE and they've been with the organization for at least 6 months, they have to obtain what we call their ICS, Incident Command System, or NIMS, National Incident Management System. They have to take the 100 and 700. And so all their certificates are in, we keep a copy of all their certificates in this notebook here. And if you want any Homeland Security grants, then all your people have to be certified in this. Okay. This little book here is pretty interesting here. You ever driven down this highway and you see placards on trucks? And the most common one you see is a 1203, well, that's gasoline. Or 1075, that's propane. And it's an emergency response guide. We can look up what the chemical name is here, or we can look up the number. And it tells us, you know, how to handle the incident. So, you know, all the trucks have to be placarded. So we carry that. It's a pretty good book to look at. Another thing that we're proud of here is we have what's called a windshield survey. So the event of a national or a local disaster, we have different routes that are that go around to all the infrastructures within the city, and all the high density areas that we have, or high hazard areas like down at the port with the propane tanks that we have down there, high life hazards such as the high schools and the schools, Columbia Ridge Assisted Living. It's a pre-described route for all the police officers to take. So they're going to go ahead and drive the route, and then on the back of the route is a list of everything that they're going to check. So they'll go ahead, drive the route, and look on the back and check all the spots, and then report back to us and what they have. So then we also have that on thumb drive as well. So this goes on. This can go on the fire MDCs or the police MDCs. One of the last things we're working on is a emergency plan for the city. And this has more to do with what the employee can do as an individual, or what should the employee do as an individual. And there's a whole, if there's flooding, if there's an earthquake, if a fire is in one of our buildings, what should we do? There's just all sorts of information that we're putting out. We're about 95% done with this. And one of the last things that we have to do is what's called COOP planning, continue operation. Thank you. Go ahead.
Continuity of operations.
Continuity of operations planning. Just like what happened to City Hall. When City Hall went down, what did we do? Okay, so we need a master plan with regards to that. And so that's what we'll be adding to this book here. So I'll go ahead and pass that one. And then every 3 months we're graded as far as how we're doing as an agency with regarding emergency operations. And so currently we've got green is good, yellows we're in progress, and then red is not currently being addressed. When I first started this, we had like 3/4 red, and right now we're about half green and half yellow. So we've made some pretty good strides in improving the emergency operation plan for the city. I'll go ahead and pass that. And then you can see in yellow, there's the COOP that we're short in. Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding the emergency operation plan for the city?
Just a little question. I mean, I took CERT training, it was a few years ago, and it's out of date now. But is there any coordination with any of the CERT volunteers, or would that come with a bigger, because, you know, I mean, the intent of CERT is to be able to mobilize individuals within their own neighborhood,
Right.
you know, to assure the safety of their neighbors.
Yeah, we don't have a CERT program within the city.
Uh-huh.
We talked with the Red Cross, and if somebody's really interested in helping out in the community, they have a person that's just dedicated to that kind of stuff, and I encourage you or anybody else want to come involved and volunteer, such as with the rehab bus and that kind of thing, to get involved with the Red Cross.
So
They are looking for people.
So my CERT training is basically worthless? Is
No, not
is
at
everything
all. It's just that,
used?
what happens is that, you know, the emergencies are few and far between, and
Right.
and a lot of people lose interest. And you almost have to have somebody dedicated to keep the training up and doing all that, and we just don't have the resources in the city to do that right now.
Okay.
So that's why, you know, kind of would like to refer it to the Red Cross until such time we have the person, like, somebody, you know, can take that task on.
Excellent. Any other questions, Dave?
Chief, you indicated that somebody had to be certified in order to get grants from Homeland Security. Who is it that has to be certified?
Well, we have to have those certificates. Your full-time, your employees need to have those certificates and show that your people are aware of the incident command system, they're aware of the National Incident Management System, and they're able to apply and qualify to get some Homeland Security grants.
All staff members?
Yes, within the city. And right now, I believe we're probably 95%, if not better.
Any further questions for Chief? Excellent. Moving on, our next topic is a human resources topic. I believe Dave Scott is going to take this one since Jeanette couldn't make it.
Right, I was going to cover this one. Council, as you recall, we discussed at your planning session earlier this year about the notion of using some of our professional services dollars that we have appropriated historically over the years for professional engineering services, and used a variety of consulting firms to leverage some of that and bring an in-house city engineer into the mix. We were encouraged, in fact, to do that by Wallace Engineering, which is the firm that provides most of our city engineer services. So that was a telling sign for me and Sean that the firm that we spend a lot of these professional services dollars with, and who would stand to lose some of that business from us, was encouraging us to have a city engineer. Helped us to realize that probably made some sense to do. As we discussed at the planning session, we would like to do that, and what is necessary from council in order to enact that is to recognize the position in the department heads manual. And the action that does that is an ordinance to amend and update the department heads manual. It's a very simple ordinance in that it just points to a new date for the manual, and then what you find in the manual is the addition of the position on the list of positions. Very straightforward. We are 90, I'll go better than 95, we're 96% done with the job announcement and our recruitment. We've done comparisons with other communities and feel like we will have a competitive position to offer, and we're very hopeful that in this market there'll be a very qualified individual that could come on board and become a member of the team and serve us well as city engineer. We hope to begin formally recruiting here in the next couple of weeks following council action to recognize the position in the department heads manual next week, if that's your pleasure. And based on the schedule that Jeanette's laid out, have a robust recruitment process to really vet that through, and hopefully by late spring you would have somebody on board with us. And I think the only other comment that I would make, other than the very, very straightforward item that would be in front of you next week on the ordinance to update the manual, is that we would be paying for this position by utilizing professional services dollars as salary instead of professional services out of 4 funds, or excuse me, 3 funds, I guess it is, Trevor and Jennifer. The water sewer fund, the surface water fund, and the general fund. And that most of the, if not all of the efforts of the city engineer would be around our capital facilities, planning and implementation and maintenance, And the development review function, we would continue to use professional services because we receive a dollar-for-dollar revenue to support that in terms of billing to customers that use that service. However, that's something that we'll evaluate as we move forward and potentially look at expanding the scope of our engineering department, if you would. So that's where we're at on that. Next week, you'll see an agenda bill with the ordinance to update the department head's manual to acknowledge the city engineer position. Any questions on that?
Nope, excellent. Moving on, Public Works, Trevor.
Yes, supplemental number 4 with Kennedy Jenks, and this is the draft PSA update, basically to get us to submittal to ecology for our general sewer plan and our facility plan. To close it out, there's some additional analysis around the oxidation ditch, which is liquid stream primary treatment, and then also some work around the environmental report. I have a few things in regards to adding in meetings for Kennedy Jenks in regards to public hearings for both the planning commission and for council, to have that as an option for them to attend and those to field questions. So those will be added in at a later date. I don't believe this will make it back to you next week. There'll be a few modifications to that, as well as the environmental report. We've got quite a bit of the environmental done from our wastewater treatment plant headworks expansion that we completed within the last 16 months, and utilized the resource company for that service. So we're making sure we're not duplicating efforts on this environmental report. When we first saw the numbers come in, they seemed a little bit high. So we will be working on that, but we will probably be seeing them by the end of this month for a supplemental with Kennedy Jenks to finish out our facility plan and general sewer plan. Any questions on that supplemental? And again, that'll probably be the second council meeting in March.
Looks like Dave.
I see on page 2 here, it says the tasks. The last one is incorporate this information into an amendment to the city's general sewer plan and into the existing draft general facility plan. My question is, are the staff better qualified to actually be incorporating the planning that these folks have done into our documents?
The service that Kennedy Jenks provides, when the general sewer plan was adopted in late 2006 and early 2007, there's been multiple modifications to that sewer plan based on infrastructure. So we've utilized a consultant to help us with that based on having limited resources around engineering. So at this point, we've utilized the managers and the assistant director to try and cover facility plan updates, and have fallen behind. We've fallen behind RCW requirements. So to date, and it does dovetail into the city engineer discussion, staff has not played that primary role in updating facility plans,
Okay, so
but assisted.
you answered my second question, which was, do we have the sufficient staff time to do it? And the answer is no.
No.
Okay. I have one other, if I may.
Yes, of course.
It says on page, the letter to, I guess it's Tom Kennedy Jenks. Yeah, it says down at the bottom there, task number 1, the new ditch will be the same size as the existing ditch. And when I saw that, the first question I had was, how does that include capacity? Is it the oxidation strictly that's the,
Yeah, so the actual footprint of the primary treatment or the oxidation ditch would stay the same. What we currently have in place is capacity for 2.24 million gallons for 2.24 MGD. What Kennedy Jenks and staff has worked around is increased horsepower and oxic zones within the ditch to be able to get a higher capacity around aeration and the horizontal and vertical mixers. So that's the analysis Kennedy Jenks' engineers will be getting into.
so rather than increasing the size of the footprint, you've increased the capacity of the area that you've got?
Right.
Okay.
And then once we get that approved by ecology, the existing ditch with some modifications around aeration and horsepower and anoxic zones, we would get a upgrade as far as capacity from ecology.
Thank you.
Okay, Any further questions on this topic? No? Seeing none, we'll move on to, go ahead, Trevor again.
Yes, Zone 4 USDA loan application with rural development. I believe it was originally executed in June of 2009 as a standalone project at that time at close to $2.5 million. When we started the feasibility or scenario of a revenue bond package in working with the underwriter, the bond underwriter, their recommendation was with what we were considering bundling into that package for water, sewer, and stormwater improvements was to rescind the application or our intent with USDA to build the Zone 4 reservoir. So that just reflects notifying them that we won't be obligating those dollars, which are part of the Relief Act stimulus fund effort by the federal government.
So you're gonna,
Yes, of course, go ahead.
you're gonna roll that into the bond request?
Yep, and we currently, within that bond request, also have the East Street water line that's been approved, but will be a consideration for the bond package with the bond underwriter that will be here later this or next month. So,
Excellent. Any more questions?
March. March tomorrow, I guess, yeah.
That's right. Okay, moving on. Trevor again.
Supplemental with SNS janitorial. This reflects the state prevailing wage rates that have come to our attention around specific qualifications. Janitor, shampooer, waxer, window cleaner, all the different disciplines that SNS provides for us. Rolling that into a formal contract amendment or supplemental to make sure that that pass-through and appropriate wage is passed on to employees and or the owner of the company. So it comes to about a net of $1,500 for 2011 for all of the facilities that SNS provides service for us, which is senior center, community center, police department, operations center, city hall. So,
That's not per month, that's for the whole year.
right. That's on an estimate based on last year's services rendered in 2010. Shampooing carpets once yearly or twice yearly, depending on the facility. We've got a little bit higher wear with the police department since it's a 24-hour facility, so we have increased service down there as far as carpets and linoleum, things like that. So that's an estimate of $1,500 for the whole year for the 2011 contract.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to be clear, it's for the remaining 10 months of this year. That's why the total change is 10 times what the monthly change is.
Any other questions? Moving on again.
All right. Our GEM agreement update, grounds, equipment, and maintenance. And I actually jotted down that we receive, at least historically, a lot more assistance from other agencies and municipalities based on their resources. We've utilized the City of Vancouver for some asphalt grinding operations, the City of Camas in regards to crack seal material and crack seal equipment, back and forth with Battleground as well. So you'll see in here that this is through 2015, so it's a 5-year increment update. This was sent to the city attorney's office, and Mr. Russin did review, and first cut was okay with the first draft for the GEM agreement.
Excellent. Anyone have any questions on this topic? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Jim Smith Excavating.
Yes. Zone number 4, bids were opened. We received 9 bids in regards to the Zone 4 project, which is around 3,000 feet of mainline water to install, as well as constructing a 1.2 million gallon reservoir on the McGuire property or the 10-acre parcel eastward of East County Fire and Rescue in Clark County. Engineer estimate was just under 1.5 million, 1.485. Low bid did come in just below 1.3 at 1.288 plus sales tax. Very competitive bids, as you can see across the board, from 1.3 to about 1.6. So the engineer estimates are starting to get closer to the climate that we're in. What we saw 16 to 24 months ago, a large gap. So that is getting honed in as we hover in this climate.
So we're saving about 200,000 on this one?
Yeah, and we had mentioned that in regards to the CIP for all the utilities and those estimated costs of those projects, and tracking that in regards to the type of impact that has ultimately with rate analysis and the outlay for the capital improvements. So we are tracking that.
Dave?
I see you checked licenses and things like that. Do you have anything on their performance history? Any references or anything like that?
Yeah, there's pre-qualifications in regards to being able to show the ability to construct welded steel reservoirs or install mainline water. So there was pre-qualifications for the project.
Okay. You guys sorted through that? Thanks.
Sure. Paul?
That was pretty much my question. I just wanted to make sure that we avoided a Columbia Rent construction kind of problem.
Yes, we actually asked of an legal opinion on that from Foster Pepper before the bid docs were routed for advertisement.
Okay, great, thank you.
Molly?
We did just briefly discuss this with Mitch at the Public Works Committee meeting, and so,
No,
didn't
it
we?
was with
Oh,
Jim Dunn.
Jim Dunn, sorry. I got my, you guys.
Yeah.
I noticed that startled look.
but I'll,
Yeah, with Jim,
Or Jim
and
should
so
probably
those were
take
some of
offense
the
with
same
it.
questions that
You
we
should
had
both
as
be
far as the
compensated.
performance and, I mean, Jim Smith Excavating, you wonder
Exactly.
what their history and reputation is, but apparently it's pretty good.
Yes.
They are doing projects now in
Yeah.
the Oregon, Portland area, metro area?
Yeah, they're based out of Clackamas.
Yeah.
There was a few bids submitted, City of Canby, the City of Oregon City for a small water line project, 400,000. So yes, the references to point are now good. Yeah.
What drives Marcy?
It should have been to the left for Jim Smith. Yeah. Yep. Be the alternate. That's the case. So we
Questions?
We anticipate late April, contractor mobilizing with all of the license, bond, and insurance checks out. We will have pre-notification in regards to parcel owners that are in close proximity to that capital improvement. We've had a public outreach effort, and those that have tracked our outreach effort in regards to working, or trying to work out a lease and or easement with East County Fire and Rescue to build the reservoir on their property. So there will be pre-notification for residents in that area and or parcel owners that contractor will be on site. We'll be working on behalf of the city of Washougal, but will be within Clark County jurisdiction. So staff's tracking that.
Excellent. Any further questions? Okay, moving on. Chief Mitchell, PSA with West Columbia Gorge Humane Society.
Yes, this is a new professional services agreement with West Columbia Gorge Humane Societies. As you know, this year their funds were reduced, and as a result of that reduction in funds, they made some changes basically with their hours of operation where they would be open for city business. So, and that effective day is Wednesday. So that's really pretty much the only change that we've been informed of. They're still going to be open to the public 7 days a week from 9 to 12, but just that one day, Wednesday, where city business, they would not be open to do that type of business. There's also some things, some cleaning supplies that we're providing for the necessary cleaning of the kennels and whatnot. So I think that's about it, unless if anybody has any questions on that.
Any questions? Oh, Dave, go ahead.
Ron, on page 1 there, it talks about the payment for general professional services. What are general professional services? I didn't see those. It talked about a little bit about them in Exhibit A, but I wasn't very clear on that.
General professional services, David?
The way that we have crafted this professional services agreement moving forward is to break it into two distinct pieces. One is the very specific service of housing impounded dogs, for which the agreement provides a boarding fee.
I'm clear on that part.
And the other general professional services are the general types of services that the Humane Society provides in the community and that we support with the $12,500 appropriation. So the fact that they are there, that they are available to the public for the variety and full portfolio of services that they provide. So that is how we have described what they are providing to the city for the $12,500, and then the remaining services, the various are kind of a one-to-one relationship between boarding and impact fees.
This would have been the 12,500 that council passed as
That's correct.
amended,
Yes.
as a budget change in the 2011 budget.
Correct.
It's the same services that in the prior year were correlated to the 25,000.
That's correct. And it's my understanding it's the management of the facility as well as they provide the adoption services and that sort of thing.
Public outreach.
Public outreach. It's just a general overall management type fee.
Can I ask just sort of
Sure, Mom.
an additional question? I don't really, it's kind of a soft question. So has the West Columbia Gorge, have some of their people been working with the police or talking to anybody about finding other avenues for fundraising, or?
I have not been contacted about any avenues for fundraising.
Okay.
That topic has been broached. Sean and I had a couple meetings with them as they were trying to discern how they would address the reduction from 25 to 12.5 and how they were going to attack their continued viability. And certainly other fundraising is something that was generally discussed. We didn't get involved specifically with any particular events or would we be sponsoring different events. There was just some general discussion about that. We certainly told them that we would be open to supporting them to the extent that that was legitimate for us to do and viable for us to do. But certainly continue to encourage them to be as proactive as they can possibly be. And in fact, as you'll recall, I can't remember exactly where it is in the agreement, but one of their responsibilities is to pursue that rigorously.
Okay. No one else has a question. I have a question about the reduced hours. As I recall, in our interlocal agreement with Camas, we're actually supposed to provide access to the animal shelter during operational hours of the City Hall operational hours, our regular hours. So will animals be available to the public during regular city operational hours via the animal control officers, or how will that work?
If that becomes necessary, I think there's technical compliance with that agreement in that we have, it's our facility. So we have access to that facility 24/7. But the idea, I believe, is to leverage the services of West Columbia Gorge for that public interaction in terms of retrieval of impounded dogs during the hours that they're open for our business. But if a situation presents itself outside of that time and a citizen has a specific issue, then we can deal with that and we'll deal with that, so we are available.
Excellent. Dave?
I'm looking at paragraph 12, euthanasia. This is, the city shall consider all commonly accepted alternatives to euthanasia as provided by the Society for Injured, Debilitated, or Fractious Dogs, and shall consider rehabilitation, including but not limited to veterinary assessment, dog behaviorist and training evaluation, neutering, drug therapy, fostering, adoption, and/or surrender to appropriate rescue organization. Is the city on the hook to pay for that? For those services?
We paid for the euthanasia.
We pay, if there is euthanasia, we would pay for that. If there's going to be significant alternatives to euthanasia beyond their typical housing and adoption, we have to authorize it, and it's not our policy right now to pursue any of those. The way that we handle that, I believe, is the fact that after 5 days, if an impounded dog is not retrieved by its owner, it becomes no longer an impounded dog, and the city sort of disclaims the dog, and it becomes the society's.
They accept the ownership of it.
Right, and then I believe that their mission comes into play in terms of how they deal with that dog.
Okay, my concern here was unlimited liability.
Right.
But I see you've taken steps to limit it. Thank you.
Yes.
Concerns resolved.
Any other questions? Excellent. Moving on. Chief, you're up again.
Okay. One more. Last fall, September or so, Clark County applied for and received a federal grant to establish a Veterans Therapeutic Court. And this agenda has basically 2 exhibits to it. There's the interlocal agreement that allows the cities, Camas, Washington, Vancouver, to participate in this at no cost. And the second interlocal agreement, my understanding, has to do with bringing the interlocal court into an existing agreement that we already have. So there's no cost to the city for this. So any, it would be a free service to any veterans in our area to be able to put them through the therapeutic court. And then after sentencing, then there'd be some rulings done after that. But it's a free service to provide for the local veterans. Again, that's a 2-part agreement that the mayor we're asking the mayor to sign.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry I didn't worry about this in advance. I didn't think of it until just now. Do we have a feel for how many people going through our system are veterans?
Boy, I couldn't tell you. Now, I can certainly maybe research that for next week. But I don't know, if that's possible, Dave, I'll tell you.
It's not something that sort of really need to track or anything. I was just curious.
Any other questions for the chief? No? Excellent. Moving on. Community development, sign regulation. Mitch?
Thank you.
Glutton for punishment, I think.
Let it be noted that Mitch is plugging in his iPad for the presentation.
Shall we take a picture?
Hit the button. Left.
And it says, and then number 2.
And then number 2. Perhaps you have the magic touch. We tried this about 3 times today, and it worked every time.
Ms. Sec.
Aye.
Makes it happen.
There we go. Sweet.
All right.
Computer too.
Sweet.
I'm hopefully I'm not going to be as long as everybody else was, but no promises. Sign regulations, really quickly, I wanted to, from last week, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do and how we move forward from here. So real quickly for tonight, procedurally, I'm kind of going over some general, just really general about what we're asking for within the motion. Then I want to get a little more specific about what we're asking for within that motion. I want to go over the substantive changes, basically utilize the matrix that I talked roughly about in January about when we only hit on a couple of items, but I'd like to go through that. And also kind of next steps for the Planning Commission, what we want to have come back as a group. So as far as general goes, you'll remember this thing. I'm going to try to forget it. I just wanted to try to, in a way, show what Exhibit I was ending up doing. So I had that, but I kind of looked at it as this is a soup here. We got Exhibit A, which you got back in January, Planning Commission's recommendations, staff comments related to that. You have Exhibit G, which is, I'll get into the more details of it. And you have Exhibit H, which I'll get into the more details of that. But all those things together is what we're talking about. So we have Exhibit A, Planning Commission's recommended language to you. We have Exhibit G, which basically reverses everything that we had in there about off-site signs. That's exactly what it does. And then you have Exhibit H, which was just new language related to height of signs along the freeway. So you had Exhibit A, Exhibit G, Exhibit H, and you end up Exhibit I. That's what we have. Makes it all up. That's what we have there. So is there any question about what makes those ingredients that make up Exhibit I, that soup? Seeing none, I'm going to move on then. Get into a little more specifics about what each one are. Exhibit A. This was the original PC recommendation. It also had language in there that staff was recommending, specifically related to the off-site signs that the Planning Commission was recommending. It was underlined as new language, double underlined was existing language that was just moved, strikeout language was language that was proposed to be removed. So that's where we started, that's what we got on January 18th. So that's really the first step to that soup that I was talking about. Then you have Exhibit G. This was our recommendation that reversed everything. And I want to kind of walk through this so everybody understands what it does. The first item there is, in 1860-03015, that's existing language that's in the code, and it'll remain. The only thing that we, as staff, is trying to change, or reverse, if you will, from the Planning Commission recommendation, is to change premise to site, is to replace that. That's existing language. It'll read just like it did before, except it'll say off-site signs, except as described in 1860-0502. So it just reverses the language that the Planning Commission wanted to add. The same with 1860-04018, little exception. This is all brand new language that they wanted to add. And our recommendation is that none of that is added. So again, reverse what Planning Commission wanted, no changes whatsoever related to the off-site signs. 1860-058, 1A, this was new language that the Planning Commission wanted to add relating to that 18, that new language. It was a reference back to that new section 18 that they wanted to put in there. So our recommendation is to take that out. We don't want to reference a section that in theory is not going to be there, so take that out. 1860-062-2B, again, existing language on the bottom here, a temporary off-site development sign for the purpose of identifying a development not exceeding 32 square feet in area. That's existing language in the code. The Planning Commission wanted it to change it, add the number, allow 3 of them, development, residential, and the other language. We're just saying, no, we're not gonna, we don't wanna touch the off-site signs. We just wanna leave them status quo. And then again, the changes within the table, 1860-090 table, 1860-090-1, that would add a footnote referencing that new section on off-site signs. So then we move into Exhibit H.
Mitch,
Yes, absolutely.
Before we jump to H, just to make sure I'm understanding G, so the planning commission worked through the off-site signs, had some recommendations, some of which the staff agreed with, some of which the staff and legal counsel did not agree with, because they were not content neutral, which is unconstitutional under the First Amendment, that any provisions for off-site signs have to be content neutral. And so the planning commission has asked you to send all of that back, all the off-site sign stuff back to them, and in the meantime, leave the code in status quo.
Right.
And so basically what Exhibit G does is it tweaks Exhibit A to back out anything that was happening with off-site signs, so that at the end of the day, while they continue to work on it, the code stays the same status quo regarding off-site signs.
And it reverses the changes that staff had proposed, because we had proposed removing the temporary sign, off-site sign for development. And it doesn't touch that either, it leaves that alone. Just basically, it doesn't, and I talked about that a little bit later about, it's not that we're saying we just want to ignore that, we want that to come back to the planning commission.
Okay.
But that, you're exactly right, it basically just makes those changes to Exhibit A that leaves everything status quo as it relates to off-site.
With respect to off-site signs,
Yep.
so that it can be worked to into a better package
Yep.
that's constitutional and come back as soon as possible.
That's the idea, absolutely.
So to try again on simplifying it, what we're doing is we're doing this in two pieces. This is the first piece before us, and everything having to do with off-site signs goes back to the planning commission, and we stay status quo ante.
Yeah, that's
And-
planning commission's recommendation, that's gonna be staff's recommendation, and then ultimately that's up to the desire of the council.
And then planning commission is going to work through part two, which is off-site signs, and forward the recommendations to us.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but probably among other things too.
And the reason G had so many pieces to it is off-site signs are found in multiple places in the code, and so we had to reach in and back out the changes in all those multiple places to get back to the status quo.
And when we get to the matrix, you'll, I'll walk through that matrix. It's kind of long, but I highlighted, and you'll see when we get there, but you'll see each section, but it is spread out quite a bit throughout there.
Do we find that most of the problems with off-site signs have to do with freestanding stake signs or signs people put in the ground versus the A boards? It seems like those cheaper signs, not the A boards, we would have more chance of abuse than we would necessarily the A boards.
Typically, you don't see, although, Sam and Rick testified tonight that they utilize the A-frame signs, but again, that's real estate related, and, there's kind of historically been that idea behind that. Our code doesn't say that, it only talks about them on site, and so if we want to even look at allowing the A-frames off-site for the, real estate community, we need to take that back and actually add language for that. But to answer your question, it really doesn't matter about, what it's being, if it's off-site, it's off-site. And, they're all problems, if you will, because they're all in violation of the code.
Yeah, I think in looking at how business utilizes those signs, the A-frame sign is it's more costly than if you were to go and just buy a sign you drive in the ground to stake.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of an investment.
You bet.
So the businesses are gonna be less apt to abuse an A-frame sign by leaving it out longer, or, they're gonna take care of it, versus someone who just goes and pounds a sign in the ground and then they leave it.
Well, that's typically why the A-frames end up on site, and they're not a problem, because they do cost more and they don't want people walking off with them. I mean, I think you're absolutely correct.
So, I think there almost needs to be a distinguishing factor there from A-frame to, those types of signs. The others, and I think that would give us kind of the more the flexibility for businesses to be able to use the A-frame signs and then not get pounded with fees or punishments for leaving them out, because chances are they're not going to leave them out. Versus those businesses that would use, the stakes or the wires.
And that's one of the things that we can look at regulating, time, place, and manner, and that would be kind of the design of that. If we wanted to say your off-site signs have to be A-frame signs, that kind of, that puts more of a cost to the business, but it also would maybe encourage some investment in that, protecting that. They're allowed now in the commercial zones. They can, on the property, they can put them out, and you see them everywhere. It's just when they start going off-site, that's when they become a problem. But I mean, that's kind of the thing that we would want to say, okay, Planning Commission, this is something that, if we're looking at off-site signs, if we're looking at allowing those things, maybe we have to put a design issue.
And I guess what I'm looking at, when I want the Planning Commission to look at, is how do we move towards self-governance in regards to the signs? How do we give people, put the responsibility on the sign owner and not on the city to enforce it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we give them that ability to do those things? That's what I'm looking for. And so the other aspect of that too, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this in your presentation, I'm a little concerned of why we're regulating banners on buildings. If you're a business and you want to hang a banner off the side of your building, why is that any of the city's business? And how long it stays up, or applying for a permit or anything to that effect. If it's on the building, it's no one else's issue. That's their issue. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up as well.
Well, I guess if you, and the language about banners is in here, and you'll see that one of the changes that was made related to banner was the way that it was defined. Basically, it could, that way you could utilize banner now under current code is it could be your sign. You don't have to put up a fascia sign or a monument sign, but you could use a banner, but it requires a permit. And the way that we changed the code, putting them under temporary, one, it's cheaper. Two, it's an additional sign beyond what you're already allowed. But it's the same thing, I think, that why would we, and I'm gonna throw this out there, but why would we regulate any signs then? I mean, if you're going to put up a banner or a monument sign or a fascia sign, it kind of gets back to those, the purpose statement issues about what we look at and what we want as a community, kind of that value part of it. If I lived across from a business that put up a big banner, why do I want to look at that the whole time? That's not attractive to me or my business. It may not be attractive to my business. I think it's the same kind of thing that we, not putting those values in there, but in that purpose statement.
I just don't hear that argument from citizens or business owners in regards to when I'm talking to business. Oh, I really don't like the way he's doing this or that. People just, I find that most people just want to be left alone.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do hear some, I do, people that, don't like this sign, or why do they get that sign and I don't get this sign, and I do hear that, and what I fall back on is, what does it say in our code? That's the only thing. And as a council, if you're looking at the sign code and the purpose statement and all of it, whatever you guys are putting into place, that's what I'm going to fall back on. What I'm giving you is kind of the changes that, as we saw through Planning Commission, we saw the Wesley Ford came out and was concerned about our temporary sign provisions. They heard what we proposed with balloons and banners, and and the timing, they were all on board. Totally, they could make that work. Same with Dan Dillies, he was looking at, well, 60 days isn't enough. Okay, so it was 90. Yep, all right, that's what we did. We got, we put it in the temporary sign provision. So I think we made those concessions, if you will, and I think, or allowances, probably a better word. We made provisions for that to occur.
But I think at the same time, a lot of those people make those concessions because they don't think there's any other way of doing business. And they don't think that there's a possibility of giving them more self-governance in the issue. One of one of the, I think we have to make a distinction, in my opinion, between banners and what a banner looks like and how you hang it versus a sign. If there's no distinction, I mean,
Well,
if somebody hangs a banner on the side of their building, that's a lot different than putting a sign out by the road. It's a totally different.
But under current code, the way that banner was written, there's no difference.
Right.
A banner could be your sign.
Mhm.
And the idea behind that was, no, we wanted something that, someone made the investment in their business and put a nice sign up there. But at the same time, for other issue, or, grand opening or a sale or something, you had an opportunity to put a banner up, for 90 days throughout the year.
Mhm.
And so, that's what we looked at under the temporary sign provision.
Michael, I know you had a question.
Yeah, with regards to the A-frames, going back to a comment that I heard earlier with regards to perhaps having the people who put out the signs have self-governance. I actually really do appreciate that. I really do like the idea of people having self-governance, but there was a thought that came up along with that I think we have to be careful about, because when it comes to self-regulating, let's assume that there is some business out there that puts out so many signs that your average citizen thinks it's blight. And it's just, this is it's getting a little annoying to see all these signs all over the place for this, whatever it is. And at that point, if we're going to go the direction, which I'm not saying we shouldn't, if we're going to go the direction of saying, let's just get rid of all this off-site regulation and just say, let's see what it looks like. If we take that experiment, we might want to think about a way in which the citizens could either go to the business or basically set a framework so that citizens go to the business and say, you know what, I really don't like these signs, it's all a bunch of blight, and talk to them directly. Now, on the one hand, if the business or the concern is able to just disregard all of that, and they say, well, you know what, profits are up, business is great, it's booming, their concern could be, satisfied, and they wouldn't be necessarily so concerned about people being annoyed by seeing all this advertisement. At the same time, I think that would be some of the method of self-governance if the city stays out of that. I don't know what that would look like. It is fascinating though.
Actually,
It would look like.
Paul had a comment.
I know, he was addressing Mike, I was just gonna respond to him, while I'm thinking about it. Just real quick though, we had 3 years of self-governance. The mayor did not enforce the sign code. And
Not
so-
necessarily though.
But as our vast staff, there were no complaints during the 3 years.
But-
So,
Well, the
None that
problem
I
with
know
that
of.
is that it wasn't on paper, so the people who limited themselves to the actual code did limit themselves, not knowing that they wouldn't have been slapped on the wrist, or.
Okay, Mike, I want to interrupt for just a minute. I know you had a comment, Paul.
To follow on with what you're talking about, Michael, in my view, it's not even the homeowners that we need to protect here. It's the business owners who have substantial investments in their signage. Anybody who's been in the advertising business at all is always worried about what's called clutter. If I've spent several $1,000s on a sign, and now the 3 businesses across the street and the 2 next door to me are completely covered with banners, where the hell is my sign? That's a whole lot of the sign code regulation is, are you going to allow someone to come in and cover the street with signs to the detriment of the other business owners on the street and their existing investment in their signage? I think that's a big issue.
Dave? Sorry, Emily. Go ahead.
I don't see that as a big issue in Washington.
Okay, Molly?
I do kind of like John's idea and some of the ideas that have been expressed by the citizens about A signs off-site. And I do think that, if we pass this part of the code on Monday, I would like to, because there's no reason that we can't pass this and actually ask Planning Commission to still consider looking, continuing to investigate, say, A signs off-site, because they are an investment, and it is possible for them to walk away. So people are, you know, business owners are gonna try and really take very good care of those. And, I mean, I just look at something, maybe this isn't an example, but, so Papa's Ice Cream has an A-board that's maybe down on the corner of Main Street and Washougal River Road to try to entice some of those passing people. But you know that he's gonna be bringing those in at night, because otherwise they'd disappear. But, you know, I mean, I do like the idea of A-boards being distinctive from the pound stake in the ground signs.
The other
And,
thing, I agree, Molly, you're kind of stealing my thunder a little bit about, you know, moving on, but the other thing to think about is that if it's Papa's, Mercantile, everybody clamoring to get their A-frame on the corner, and we've created a whole other, you know, issue of sight and blight, if you will,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
if everybody downtown. So, I mean, it's not that we are saying we don't want it. I think it's just saying there's questions that we need to have, you know, answer in order to put that into the code, and that's exactly what Planning Commission wants to do, and that's exactly what staff is recommending.
So to me, that would be the appropriate authority, you know, group to go back to, because they've been dealing with this for a long time, and I would say let's let them continue to tackle these pieces.
Great, Dave.
I have a special place in my heart for realtors. They have a unique business, which is dependent upon advertising on a timely basis. And getting people who are out roaming the neighborhood looking for their location that they read about in the paper. In a neighborhood they're not familiar with, getting to that location. And those A-boards form the way to do that. I don't know how you incorporate that into this, but for businesses like that, I don't see an option. I mean, how else can you guide the individual that doesn't have the navigator in his car to the location?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe the Planning Commission completely understands that, and I believe the staff completely understands that, and it is our desire to craft language that will provide for that. Unfortunately, we're preempted by the First Amendment from saying real estate signs can. It has to say signs can. And that's the only issue that's really at play right now. I just tell you a very brief story from some previous experience in having been responsible, and Mitch and I have talked about this, for this very issue, and it came up because of the desire to accommodate realtors in open house signs. And there had been complaints in the community about really what had been an abusive proliferation of real estate signs during the height of the boom in East Vancouver, and it caused a couple council members who resided in that area to have some concerns because constituents were coming to them and I mean, it was just everywhere. There were real estate signs everywhere. Some people would have said, you know, that's a sign of progress and growth, and others saw it as blight, which is one of the dilemmas with dealing with the sign code, is everyone takes a different tack when looking at the same thing. And so when it is enforcement, there was not really enforcement. Most communities don't go around knocking over open house signs on the weekends or on Thursday or Tuesday when the realtors do their brokers opens or all of those things. But it began to happen because of the concerns of council members. It caused quite an uproar in the real estate community, as you can imagine. And so we began a lengthy process to try to devise off-site sign provisions to accommodate the real estate community without naming the real estate community. And it was very tricky because every time you push down on one thing, so it would work for the real estate industry, you were concerned about what door it opened up for others. Ultimately, there was some code language that was introduced that seemed to work for the real estate industry, and they stepped up to the plate and said, please don't enforce. If you get a complaint, send it to us. And their paid staff actually put on a code enforcement hat and started talking to members of the association if they were abusing. And that worked pretty effectively, and I think that at the end of the day, I think everyone was happy, but it was amazing how difficult it was to do that. So we have some examples very locally about how to craft some A-board provisions. Councilman Russell's comments are right on about the level of investment in an A-board and the level of care, therefore, that is taken by the owners. You can regulate time, place, and manner. Manner would be, it has to be an A-board, not a piece of cardboard stapled to a one-by-one piece of wood. You will get, I think, a little more pride of ownership in those signs, as these gentlemen will probably tell you, and they'll take care of those. The risk is what Mitch mentioned, and that is, it's a good problem to have, I guess, when you've got a robust area with lots of businesses vying for attention, and there's A-boards at every intersection. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 A-boards. It starts to get a little much, but you're happy to see that these folks are there and viable and they're doing business. So how do you find that balance to keep it safe? And that's what we'll try to find.
Confidence in your ability to do that.
And the Planning Commission, I think, is anxious to do it.
John, did you have another question or comment?
No, I just keep in mind, the reason why businesses use these signs is because advertising is so expensive. And signs are the most sustainable way for a business to be able to advertise versus having one hit in the paper or one hit in the, in a mailer, or, signs are the lifeblood for many businesses. And that is, very, something we've got to keep in mind as we progress through this whole process.
I was just going to also mention, if you think about some of the people involved, I'm a former realtor. I used to do this for a living. So I understand perfectly what those signs mean. Mike Lamb, who's on the Planning Commission, is a top 10 realtor in Clark County. And Jim Reinhardt, who is the present chair, although he's moved on a little bit, he used to be a compliance attorney for a title insurance company. So his bread was certainly buttered on the side of realtor sales. So there's a lot of interest in trying to figure out a way to make this work, but Dave hits the nail on the head here. We've got a First Amendment limitation that we can't be content specific. And that didn't used to be as much of a problem, but there've been some court cases. So this stuff, I have great confidence that Lamb and Reinhardt in particular will figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah, my concern, even though the realtors are a great aspect to the signs, that's not even really across my mind in regards to this argument. I'm talking about the businesses, the established businesses that are here that have brick and mortar buildings that need to advertise, or they maybe work out at home and need to be able to advertise their home business. So it's, that's, to me, that's where my focus is. The real estate, they're just, to me, they're going to benefit from a good sign code, just like the rest of the businesses. So, it's not one or the other for me.
Dave?
But I heard 3 criteria mentioned earlier: time, place, and manner. If we can't regulate it appropriately with those 3 criteria, maybe we shouldn't be regulating it. Because those 3 criteria cover just about every situation. And in combination, they can restrict, and singly, they can open up flexibility. So I think time, place, and manner give you what you need, Mitch. And I'm sure that Reinhardt and Lamb will come up with that.
Yeah, it's all that we have. I think that, because we can't regulate the content, and it's the opening the door, that if we open the door for one, I wanted to go back to the beginning of this, this was actually Planning Commission's language, which was relating to open houses, open house signs. So it was very specific to the real estate community, and that's where staff had concern that, we're opening up a door here for the real estate community. So their desire is to have that. I mean, they share that, to have that open house, but we're saying that if we're gonna open it, we need to open it, and we need to look at everything.
And it's not just the people who sell houses, it's the people who buy them.
Mm-hmm.
We want to encourage that.
Any other comments?
Oh, I'm not done.
I know.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we cover this before we move on.
Dave had to ask about, making sure I had everything on
That
there.
Exhibit G clarification, I'm
All right.
Hopefully Exhibit H is a little less confusing. Height of the sign along SR 14. The language, our proposed language, basically made it, the height go in relationship to the height, the elevation of your site compared to the elevation of SR 14, up to a maximum of 50 feet.
Before we leave that, or were you?
It's still there, yeah.
Oh, you're still.
I just zoomed in on it, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just didn't, I wanted to address that for a moment. So with the new code, basically, instead of having a 50-foot sign, basically you have a 20-foot sign in relationship to Highway 14. Is that
You
about
have
right?
20-foot high, tall sign in relationship to your site, regardless of SR 14. If SR 14 goes 30 feet in the air and your site is all the way down here, you can go 20 feet from your site.
That's current code.
That current code.
Oh.
Current code is 20 feet. What we're saying, originally what we said was, let's make, instead of being 20 feet from your site, you can go to 50 feet. So that we were thinking, okay, you can get up higher for the, if the SR 14 gets, depending on how high that gets. But instead of doing that, we said, okay, you can at least have 20, but you can also go an additional foot for each foot that your site is below SR 14. So you could start, it could creep up. It may not, it may be 25, but it could go all the way up to 50. No higher than 50 though.
Okay.
Okay, John?
Do we have any comments from the businesses in regards to?
Wesley Ford liked the idea of having a taller sign.
No, sorry, as far as this change, as far as the.
Taller sign?
Well, the 20
Oh,
foot
oh.
and then adding.
No.
Nope. No comments on that.
Well-
Do we have any perspective or maybe some kind of, I know it's hard because it doesn't exist yet, but some kind of a visual that we could recreate to show
I'll get
what
there.
a sign of, would look like? Because I'm concerned at 20 feet, if the highway's going up at 20 feet, is the language as it's written going to be enough for it to be elevated high enough to be able to be seen by traffic?
Well, in theory, the idea would be is that it's leveling your site with the 14. So you got that 20 feet, then you can start going up based on how tall 14 gets. And I think Paul had mentioned right now they're looking at 25 feet. Right? So if that's the case, if it's 25 feet, then you could have the highest sign that anybody could have along there, if there would be 45. Yeah. But we
Okay.
put it at 50.
So the intent behind this change is essentially to salvage 20 feet of height visibility for those businesses that abut the 14. And they were going to be completely compromised potentially by the berm. And so the first analysis said, what's the worst case scenario for how high that berm's going to be? Well, it might be up to 30 feet. Okay, 50. Then we stepped back and said, wait, as the berm just takes off, it's only compromising you by 5 feet. Now all of a sudden, we're actually changing the height in our community from 20 to 45, and the idea was just to keep it at 20 from perspective. Now from the city side, to the north of the berm, these signs are going to appear a lot taller than what anyone else would get. But from the 14, they will appear no taller than what anyone else would get. And I think that's fair.
And that makes sense because, I mean, even right there along, where the heating company is, the heating cooling company on the corner there on C Street, that whole section on the left-hand side, there are people that own that land, that are developers that are talking about putting businesses there. When we talk about a 50-foot sign there, that would really be out of place in regards to, say, Quiznos and that area is further down. So I think it's a good.
Yeah, because basically it'd be 50 feet all the way across, but as you got up 14, there wouldn't be any difference between
Right.
the two. So it does, I think it is fair. It does Seems fairly straightforward. Yeah.
Any questions for Mitch?
Thank you.
Keep going.
Okay. So, the Exhibit I suit, and this is what you got, the ordinance that you got from Dawn that night. And you'll notice that it says, it should be noted that Exhibit I is comprised of Exhibit A to Agenda Bill 711 from the agenda of January 18th, 2011, as modified by Exhibits G and H from Agenda Bill 2411, contained in the agenda of February 22nd, 2011. For ease of application and clarity, only Exhibit I is attached to this current ordinance. So he was actually trying to, if I guess I could have said that the other night, but I don't know how much that would have helped. But that's really what we're trying to do here. And so my hope is that as we move forward, that we'll only be dealing with Exhibit I from this point on. I mean, that has all those changes that we've talked about this evening. So is there any other questions about what makes up Exhibit I? Okay. Substantive changes. This is the matrix. I think it was back in January that I was here, and at that time we talked about just kind of hitting the highlights of the things, but I wanted to make sure that if there was any issues or questions, this matrix, it's actually about 17 pages long, so I'll try to move through it as quickly as possible. I told you, it was going to be my fault. But I did highlight some of the more substantive changes. The rose color will be the kind of substantive changes, and then I've grayed out the ones that are related to Exhibits G and H. So this change, this is new language that's going in, blade bracket signs, a new type of pedestrian-oriented sign, so we created new language for that. There's actually also provisions for it for when it's implemented. And you can see it's in line 35 below. You'll see, if you're kind of looking at this as we move through, you'll see a lot of changes related to site and premises. Temporary, we scratched a lot of signs that said temporary in nature, or because we added the provisions related to temporary signs, so they need to be specific about that. This is the banner right there, John. It means any temporary on-site sign such as those used to announce, and it actually said open house, grand opening, or to make a special announcement. Normally it's constructed of cloth, canvas, similar material, and then it will be considered either as a fascia or freestanding sign depending on the method of attachment, and will have to comply with the normal zoning regulations. So in that case, with the definition of the way it was, that could be your sign, and that was it. But the changes that we made to it, adding the word temporary, so it's regulated under temporary sign provisions, it's an additional sign into those that you're already allowed on site, and to advertise one of those special events, announcement, or what.
So Mitch, items 6 and 7 are actually enhancing advertising opportunities for business.
Absolutely, yeah. And we had comments on blade bracket signs from Killian's that thought it was a great idea. It's actually been utilized for the hearth down here. And remember, the core is not subject to the same sign criteria, but that's the kind of idea that we were thinking of with that. Again, sign, sites, premises, nothing real major there. Projecting signs was changed to take in blade bracket signs. The definition of temporary sign means a sign placed on a structure of the ground for a specifically limited period of time as provided in 1860-060, which is our new language related to temporary signs. Sign permit review, we actually changed all that. That was, Planning Commission doesn't hear land use appeals, and that was just antiquated language, so we got rid of that. Prohibited signs, this is off-site. This is Exhibit G, you'll note that there. This is where we're trying to reverse everything out, so that's actually that language that relates to one of the pieces of that relate to the temporary sign provisions. Signs exempted from regulation. I brought this one up because it's a political sign, and so I thought maybe it'd be a concern, but we actually looked at the case law related to it, and the language that we're adding is that political or other non-commercial messages that do not exceed 1 per candidate, issue, or event per abutting street. We got legal opinion that that was something that we could look at. So if you have one piece of property, you can't have the same sign 10 times along the frontage. That's what that is. So that's time, place, manner that we're looking at regulating there.
So that's item 23 is regulating political speech.
It's in the definition it's in the exemptions. The signs exempted from regulation is political sign. What's exempt is one per candidate, issue, or event per property. Yeah.
So that's new language there?
That is, what's underlined there per candidate, that's the actual code language right there, and then what's proposed.
Has this been a problem?
Yeah.
Now, when you say property, is that private property, or is it public property, or anything?
Well, what we say as property is really private. Our code, 1860, doesn't touch the right-of-way. Now, the engineering standards talk about signage within the right-of-way, and we pretty much say that no, you can't have it except for our signs that are government-related and whatnot. So, directional signs, stop signs, those kind of things. But do we regulate within the right-of-way? Do we do anything with political signs? No, we haven't.
And I think if we tried to in our right-of-way, we'd probably have a real problem.
Yeah.
Political speech is, as you know, under the First Amendment, is even more protected than commercial speech. Commercial speech can be regulated by time, place, and manner. Political speech doesn't have that same list of things that you can apply to it. I think in the right-of-way, it can't be unsafe. However, on private property, we can, based on some court cases, have these limits. You don't have to do this, but this is what your planning commission is recommending.
Yeah. Jennifer?
Yes, John.
I don't remember this language being in the original document that was shown us.
Exhibit A.
Matter of
It's
fact,
an Exhibit A.
in the original documentation that we received the first time, not just recently, but
January
January.
it was in that.
I don't remember that being in there, because that would have sent off a bunch of red flags. I'll be moving to strike this language at the next council meeting. This is an affront to private property, to people's right to speak. If I have a frontage piece of property and I want to put a sign on one side, and I want a corner lot, I want to put it on the other, I should have the right to do that.
And you can.
You
with
can.
This.
Huh?
You can on this.
Okay.
Because it's per frontage.
Well, if I want to put 4 signs for one candidate on my property.
Under this, you could not.
I should be able to do that. So, and it's seasonal, it's not like it's something that is.
I will note this, John, I'm not disagreeing with you, and this is a recommendation that's before you. Every time that there's ever a code enforcement issue related to signs, what gets thrown at us all the time is, well, you allow the political signs to do whatever the heck they want. And they can set up 1 million of them, and we're like, yes, you're absolutely right. But it's we're taking that step of regulating these folks, but not these folks, and everybody takes that as well, that's not right. And we say, well, that's a protected right.
It's the Constitution.
Yeah.
I would almost say too, though, that in that, if you're getting complaints about political signs, I would almost guarantee that it's probably someone who's on the opposite side of that particular candidate who's complaining.
And I don't hear, it's not specifics, John. It's not, it's this person's got this many signs. It's just you let political signs go wherever they want. It's a general statement.
Paul?
I do observe that Washington State DOT absolutely does not permit political signs in their right-of-way. If you put them there, they will remove them, and generally within 48 hours or less. Whenever they see them, they'll take them away. It used to be that they put them in kind of conveniently located DOT yards. They don't do that anymore. They take them a long ways away to store them. They really want to keep you from putting political signs in their right-of-way. And I don't have any idea the legal basis for doing that, but they absolutely do not allow political signs in their right-of-way, and they enforce it.
Well, and to John's point, this is on private property, so this
Right.
isn't related to the right-of-way.
I think there might be two different standards at play, something around federal highways, state highways versus local rights of way.
Yeah.
John?
Jennifer, this is the first time we're having encroachment on political speech. And so this is, to me, something that's worth fighting against, because once we start putting one, then we can regulate and add another and another. I think one of the things that I think is very special and unique about our community is that we don't have regulations on speech versus where some of the other communities do. To me, this is a First Amendment issue.
Any other comments? Michael?
None points have been made.
Excellent.
I can make it louder if you want.
Oh, well.
Okay, we're good.
Dave? Ollie? Nothing. All righty then. Moving on.
Again, language, this is the open house language, Exhibit G that we talked about. But this is the actual section within that we are, as staff, we're proposing no changes based on Exhibit G. Again, on-site, site, premises. Projecting blade bracket signs, again, remember I mentioned blade bracket signs, new language. This is all new language related to blade bracket signs. So this is another substantive change that we've added to the code. Again, the comments that we've gotten on this have been positive. So. A-board and freestanding sidewalk signs. Again, this was in resident, the planning commission wanted to add in residential zoning districts, open house signs were allowed. Again, Exhibit G would say, nope, we're not doing that. We don't want to touch those at this time. Temporary signs. Again, I went over this on Tuesday night, but temporary signs, what we are looking at allowing in addition to the signs that you already have, 32 square feet, 90 days throughout the calendar year. You've already adopted a lower fee associated with that. This is the actual criteria. And this is one of those things that we're getting, people are actually waiting for. Business, Mrs. What's it, Fresno? With Edward Jones's office,
Yes.
one of the ones who's waiting for this language. I talked to her today. But we're basically holding off on anything until we can try to get that language implemented for her and other businesses. And
They've got 2 street frontages, don't they?
yeah, they actually, yes, they do. Then we have combination of signs, again, Exhibit G, that's existing language that we had originally proposed removing, but we're saying let's just leave it alone and not touch it because it relates to the outside signs. Limited access highway signs in all new language, so substantive change, all brand new language.
That's Exhibit H.
In Exhibit H, absolutely, yep, Exhibit H over there, sorry. And you'll notice in here that it says, no sign or sign structure or portion thereof shall exceed 50 feet. Our language of Exhibit H on the right-hand side would change that language.
Mitch, do we have a copy of this matrix somewhere?
It was actually given to you back in January. I could be happy to email the...
Yeah, because I've got like 3 different packets here, but
Okay,
I guess
yeah.
I didn't bring the right one.
Could you back up one?
Absolutely.
Slide? Sorry to go backwards.
No.
I just want to clear something. That last portion, what am I missing here? In Exhibit I that I have here, it has double underlined electronic message center.
Yes.
That's just moved?
It was moved, yes. That should have been underlined there because we basically moved it and put it there. Yes,
Okay.
that's existing language that just got moved to that location.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Anyone?
Still moving on, getting there. More language, Exhibit G again. I just wanted to point out that This is related to the table, and actually at the time I said see attached, so I did attach the table. Substantive changes, you'll notice this column completely removed because we do not have community commercial south of the railroad right away anymore. It's all town center. So just get rid of that entire section. Also remove the notation to the north of the railroad right away because it's just community commercial. And then the mixed use, yeah, we're proposing that that be eliminated because the same sign code sections are in mixed use. And if you recall our rezoning efforts, if we keep moving forward with that, mixed use will basically be eliminated within the city, so that entire section will go away. The other language, subject to WMC 1860-058, the Planning Commission had language that they wanted. I'll go back real quick here, sorry Jennifer. Yeah, they wanted to add the footnote to reference that 1860-040-18, which is all that new language related to open houses. So they wanted all that put and referenced into the table, and we're saying Exhibit G says nope, we're not going to touch anything. We're going to reverse everything we're talking about with the A-frame or the off-site signs. Excuse me. And that's the last page of the matrix. Nothing real new there. Banded signs, again. We changed enforcement. There was some very antiquated language in there about enforcement, so we just referenced our enforcement section. So, any changes about the substantive? I mean, I've got a good feeling about where you stand with the political one, but anything else in that? Real quick and trying. Next steps for the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to real quick go over the things that I've heard. Off-site signs. You want us to kind of look at, what is it that we can do with those? The Planning Commission, they are desirous to have that back in front of them. Staff is supportive of having that come back to the Planning Commission. And just to note, if that door is opened, it's open for everybody. That's one of the things that we have to wrestle with, but they're willing to take that on. And this review could also include a review of billboards. We heard that, John, in one of the things. And so that is by nature, they are off-site signs, and so we could entertain discussion related to billboards around that. If that's the consensus of council, we definitely want to do that.
Mike?
May I add one thing about the discussion about A-frame signs. I do understand that currently the A-frames that we've heard about tonight and ones that we've made the assumption we're talking about are going to be the expensive, nice plastic ones, and they're very durable and whatnot. But we've got to consider one thing, that is that there are lots of unintended consequences to central planning. One of such could be that all your pounding in signs become A-frame signs overnight. Cheap versions, sure, it could be, but if it's an A-frame, that's that. So when we make that discussion, I mean, I have no problem with having a discussion and having more signs out there potentially, subject to our constituents' desires. But I would suggest we don't make the assumption that what you see today is what you're always going to see unless if we allow A-frame signs alone.
John?
And I want to concur with that from the standpoint of, I don't know the different varieties of A-frame signs. What I am picturing has some weight to it, so that if the wind blows, it doesn't knock them over. But if someone finds a cheaper version, that could then become a hazard as they blow into the road. They're flimsy. They're not. So some things to consider. I don't know the different models of A-frame signs, but I think when you're looking at that, if someone can find a cheap road to get it done and not have to make the investment, they'll probably try to do that, which could end up really making us look at, all right, do we regulate the weight of the A-frame sign? That's.
You can address this in the manner portion of what you can, and I think there are good examples out there of regulating the manner of placement of this type of sign, and you can ensure that it be durable and therefore generally of higher quality and not unsafe. And I think it would mitigate the concern you have, which is absolutely a concern. With all of these provisions, one thing to keep in mind is the more provisions that there are which seek to enhance advertising opportunities without destroying kind of the fabric of our community, which is the balancing act. To ensure that the provisions are followed requires the effort of staff to do it, and so it always becomes a question of prioritization around enforcement. And that's where you really hope that education and the good faith of our business community comes into play around how they will use the provisions that we provide. And that would be our focus. But it can get out of hand, and in some communities it gets out of hand, and we'll just have to keep an eye on everything as we move forward.
I think the thing that I'm really actually looking at now is with this kind of next steps of the Planning Commission is just that this is something that City Council wants us to take a look at and take back to Planning Commission. I think these are all great ideas, and I think the Planning Commission can really start, looking at that, but getting into those details. I mean, if there are specifics, or it only can be white or whatever, those are things that's what City Council wants, and those are the kind of things that the Planning Commission would have to know. So we move through that. Okay, the other, next item, pole signs. This came up at the hearing, and Dan Dilley brought this up. Our pole signs have been prohibited under the Washougal Municipal Code since January 1st of 2001. Since that time, we've only allowed monument signs, and we allow monument signs up to 20 feet in height. So one of the questions is the City Council desirous of seeing this type of sign allowed? I mean, is this something that we want to bring back into our sign code?
John?
Does anyone remember, I mean, I only gave us for around 2001, why they would have mandated monument signs versus, is it just an aesthetic thing that they?
I'm sure it was an aesthetic.
Most definitely.
In the industry, these are often referred to as lollipop signs. That sign that's in the background there, and I don't know what our definitions are, Mitch, but that looks like it's got a couple poles, and that the fascias or the panels give it some body. It's really a design standard, and the notion is that something that's a little more substantial looks better in a community than the lollipops.
Do we know what the cost difference is between the pole?
I think you're looking at
versus
materials, it's probably
A little bit higher, yeah.
Paul? Do you have a question? No? Molly?
Just a question, have you had anybody come in and ask about placing a pole sign?
Every day.
Really?
Yes.
Yep.
Hmm.
So your sense is that if we allow for these types of signs, that we'd have a proliferation of them very quickly?
This would be your sign. I almost would guarantee you this would be your sign type.
Paul?
Are there engineering issues in terms of safety? Is a lollipop sign, well, let me turn it the other way. Is a monument sign less likely to blow over?
No, because if a sign gets to a significant enough height, typically around 6 feet, it doesn't matter how it is configured. It has to get a building permit, and it has to be designed so that the pieces and parts are well connected for the wind loads and that the foundation is adequate to support it. And so theoretically, certainly a monument sign catches more wind than a pole sign of equal size, but they're both designed to resist those forces. So it's a community value aesthetics issue as to whether you want to allow that type of sign or disallow that type of sign. And the only difference would be carry that square and make it a big rectangle and bring it all the way down, and that would be a monument sign. That's the only difference. And I'm sure as you drive around in different communities, you can tell the difference between the lollipops and the monuments. The heights can be the same.
I've seen some very ugly monuments.
Well, that's actually, I'm going to go to my next point, would be, should changes be made to monument signs regarding height? Because currently we allow them 20 feet in the air. And so you get the monolith, if you will, that's just basically two poles with wrapped around it and it goes up. Sometimes our code does say it can be vegetation, but if you had a height limit on your monument sign, you wouldn't be, what I hear is that, well, if I have the lollipop, I'm not gonna have a sight distance problem because I'm just looking around a pole. But if you had a lower monument sign, you wouldn't have a sight distance problem either. So but we allow them to go 20 feet in the air, so we get sight distance problems, and signs end up moving if they want to keep that monument type sign and be that tall.
The specific,
Just a minute, Paul, I think
I'm
John
sorry.
had his hand up first.
I've seen the lower monument signs, and I've seen them in play. I'm trying to remember the city up near, like around Issaquah. I can't find a thing. I drive around town, and I'm like driving by the signs, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm at, you know, versus being able to look up and be able to see, okay, here's where I need to turn. If you ever get a chance to go up there, they have a really stringent sign code. I don't think it's Issaquah, but it's to the south of Issaquah, but they have a real, very strict code. You just can't find anything unless you're from there.
And again, that's one of those aesthetic issues that David was talking about, that, you know, you have a pole or a monument, and you made the comment, when you get some pretty ugly looking monuments, yeah, you do. But, you know, would one of those things be, if we brought it down, is that getting more to what we want to see, or, you know, but again, I'm just putting it out there, you know, if we're gonna go this way, this is what you're gonna see. I will almost guarantee this is what you will see.
Okay. Paul?
one of the specific problems that the wood stove store had is, you don't realize it, but E Street actually has a curve in it there. So if you put up basically a flat sign, you can see it from one direction but not the other. And that was one of the other reasons I think that they went to the tall monument sign, is that fixed that particular problem. What are your thoughts on allowing roof signs?
Currently, our code does not allow it.
I like that, Paul.
Can either one of you give me some discussion on why that's a good idea or why not? And
Most communities prohibit, most communities that do prohibit rooftop signs prohibit them primarily, again, around aesthetic reasons. With the imposition of some design standards, I think you can mitigate those concerns. But the classic rooftop sign that you can envision are signs in bigger urban centers where you have fairly significant, it's like a backboard, you know, where the only way to support that sign is with a lot of lattice work bracing back down to the roof. And so when you look at your it's not the landscape, it's the urbanscape, I don't like that word,
the roof line.
The roof line, you've got your buildings, and then you've got this lattice work up there, and you have these signs, and they are generally, some communities find that to not be consistent with the aesthetic value that they have in their urban core, and so they're prohibited. It gets into issues of heights. In one of the ways that communities express their values around how things are going to look in the community is how high buildings can be, and rooftop signs just automatically get you higher than that. You can affix them to the sides of penthouses, and then they're like a roof sign because they're up there for people to see, but they're really on the wall. That's generally why they're prohibited. Every community I've ever worked in ended up prohibiting them. LA, there's bazillions of them out there, but they're all dated, non-conforming.
The only other argument that I've heard on was firefighting. That's the only other argument that I've heard for rooftop, why we don't like rooftop.
Well, they add a lot of weight, so you got the structural stability of the roof and everything else. In addition to it, makes it tougher to vent the structure. You've got all the lattice and everything else.
John?
One of the things to remember too, in regards to the sign code, you know, I think the discussion of a tall monument sign versus a shorter monument sign is definitely something to remember, to think about, because the more material you're asking businesses to put into a sign, the more expensive it is. And so we're mandating costs when we have restrictions we place on business in that regard. So, you know, if we were going to have that discussion of bringing the monument sign down, that in itself would reduce costs for businesses. If we were going to talk about allowing people to do poles, that's going to be cheaper than doing a monument sign. That's going to help reduce costs for businesses. So just keep that in mind as we're, you know, proceeding on this, is that everything we're doing in this regard is affecting the bottom line for these businesses. So to me, having just only allowing them tall monument signs seems to be a little, I mean, they can go with shorter monument signs now, can't they?
Yep.
So that's already on the books.
Right, it's an option for them, but then they sacrifice the height.
Okay, so
20
it's not
foot is
really-
the maximum.
If they have that ability, then they already have the freedom to choose that. What is an issue is, do we do the pole or do we do the?
Right. The argument is it's not tall enough for anybody to see.
Gotcha,
Right.
okay.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think on some level, I'm not sure how much we are responsible for answering that question initially about how expensive the one product is. Because I can easily imagine that when a business owner views whether they buy one type of sign or another type of sign, they're going to look at the long range, you know, payoff for that investment. And yeah, it could be cheaper, a lot cheaper to have, if we mandate all signs have to be lower, it's gonna be a lot cheaper, but there again, do they lose business because nobody can find the business and they just get frustrated and just keep going on? So on the one hand, I completely understand and sympathetic that it's going to change the cost of doing business, it will. One thing we should also be aware of is that the flip side of that is also true, that if we all of a sudden start allowing certain types of signs, the cost of doing business in Washougal just went up for everybody across the board, because now everybody feels like they have to buy this big, tall, 20-foot sign. So either way you look at it, I think one of our main concerns shouldn't be whether or not the cost is worth it for the businesses, but rather whether we want that look or whether we think our citizens would really appreciate having the convenience of those types of signs versus having no signs, so on and so forth. And if we keep it on that level, then businesses will figure out for themselves whether it's worth it. And we can simply just represent the desires of the citizens in saying, hey, you know what, let's allow the signs. It's not a problem, or is it? And balance that.
Any other direction, comments, Bob?
Just one quick question, Mitch. Would present code under which that monument sign was built at the chimney store, would present code allow a little bit of a wedge, or do the sides have to be parallel?
You know, I don't know, Paul. I'd have to look into that. I think it. I don't want to fathom a guess. I don't.
Okay.
I want to say I don't think so, but I could look into it and let you know.
You can certainly look at that, because that would need to solve the problem, is to allow non-parallel faces.
Yeah, that would certainly solve that minor curve problem.
John?
I'd just like to know if there is any consensus for us to move towards the pole sign, because.
Well, not that we can take a consensus.
No, but.
Not at a workshop.
Not everyone's entering the conversation, so, but I think it's an important issue because, you know, right now, we do have businesses that do have signs like this, and we have some that have the other. I never noticed a difference or even knew it was mandated until this discussion. So, you know, to me, I wasn't turned off by the ones who had signs like this. I didn't know that there was a distinct difference in the way businesses could do it. I mean, so if this is an option, I personally don't have any problem with it, if that's the way businesses want to go with it.
Well, I'd like to send it back to Planning Commission, because that's where this particular topic about pole signs should really be, that should really blossom there, and then, you know, we can always add comments or review a lot of what they've done. I think that'll be clarifying for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really my hope with this section, is that these are the things that I've heard throughout this process from City Council that I want to take back to Planning Commission. I just want to make sure that I'm not asking for everybody to nod in unison that this is what I need, but I want their kind of, get a general feel that, if Mitch, you're way off base, then, reel me back in kind of thing.
Did you get some sort of direction on the monument sign height restriction also? That was the second issue.
I
The
just,
first
the
issue
only
was
thing,
the
the
pole
only thing I
sign,
really
the
heard
second
that
issue
was
was-
whether or not, it's more aesthetic issue. It's an aesthetic issue as opposed to a cost issue. And I understand what you're saying, more materials or what, but and I think it is. I think lollipop versus a monument, it's an aesthetic issue, and as a community, we have to decide what do we want. And planning commission can have that discussion, we can hear from the public about that,
That would be great.
and kind of take it from there. So, kind of getting to the monument signs. One of the comments that we had was related to our limited access highway signs, or LAHs. I'm not promoting that as an acronym by any means, I just didn't want to take up too much space on the slide. They're proposed to have a maximum height of 50 feet. This one here is about 35 feet. So to kind of give you a scale, John, it was like, what is it,
50 feet is huge.
how does it meet? By definition, this does not meet our code. And the reason being is it has this open area underneath. Now, they could plant vegetation. It looks like they planted some shrubs, and so we probably say, all right, you're getting there. You're getting there. But
Twigs.
one of the things that, it was a sign company that brought this to us and said that you're gonna have some awfully ugly looking 50-foot monoliths out there on SR 14. And here's some ideas that you could have for some really nice looking ones along SR 14. And we agreed. It was just, they commented after the city or the planning commission's hearings. So,
You said this is how tall?
that's 35 feet.
3.5 stories. 50 feet is 5 stories. But if you had a Highway 14 berm 25 feet high in the background, immediately contiguous, almost immediately contiguous in the background, from that freeway, that sign doesn't look so big.
Do
John?
we have any signs right now presently that are up at that height, that have that much bulk? Because I'm looking at that sign, imagining another 10 feet on it with the gorge winds. I mean,
Well, if you imagine that's 35 feet tall, I mean, these are pretty significant. I'm sure that this is, I'm not an engineer, but I'm sure this is pretty far in the ground there. And
You can build giant signs for hurricane winds.
Okay.
And they are expensive and have huge, giant footings deep in the ground with massive amounts of concrete and steel, and huge steel pipes with massive welding. It's all designed, but
So
it's
do we-
expensive.
Will we have standards?
that's really what I'm talking about now, is that one of the sign company brought this to our attention, and I totally agree with it, is that if we have our current code that would apply there, and that's what the limited access highway sign says now, is that they have to follow basically all the regulations of the district except height, then they could have a 50-foot monolith, basically. And he gave us this example. He gave me another one too, but I didn't put it in the slide, save on time. And but it looks nice. I mean, it's a very attractive sign, but I think our code needs to be changed and to look at this. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a limited access highway sign criteria issue that we have to address. This could be just a monument sign issue that we can address. And so that's really the other question, is that are modifications needed to the standards to allow those, to allow these? And yes, by code, this doesn't meet our code. We would have to modify our standards, but as staff, my recommendation to you and to Planning Commission would be, yes, we need to look at this to allow something more along this line, along SR 14, and throughout the city, for that matter, as opposed to just what we have, our 20-foot monolith.
How does it not meet code?
It's open in this area right here. Code says it has to be from ground to sky and no more than 10% deviation between the base and the top. Our code does say you can fill this in with landscaping though and meet that criteria, which I think that, it's hard to tell, but I think that they try to do that.
Okay.
Mitch, I don't understand why you want to fill in that area with landscaping or something, because I would think that having visibility through the sign.
You're absolutely correct in that, and I'm not proposing that we do. I'm saying current code, that's exactly what it says, is that this has to be, basically you can't see through it. And that's why I'm saying we need to maybe look at our standards and start allowing for that. It may solve some of the site distance issue, probably would in most cases, but those are things that I think we need to look at. It came up with these limited access highway signs, but I think it is something that we could look citywide.
Paul?
Do we also have maximum building heights,
Yeah, absolutely.
which are?
75.
In the commercial district, 75 feet.
In the commercial district or the downtown core?
Commercial district. Actually, downtown core, I think, is 65. With bonuses, you can go up higher.
How about the industrial area?
Industrial park, I want to say it's a 50-foot height limit right now, but I could be wrong on that one. I haven't had any tall buildings down there.
Can we fight fires that high?
Right now, we call on City of Vancouver with their ladder truck, or City of Camas has.
Camas has a ladder truck?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
John?
So if we were to go to a pole sign, then that would allow the commercial folks along Highway 14 to go to a pole instead of one of those?
Yep.
Okay.
If we want to talk about that.
So I think the balancing act that'll come back to the planning commission is, used to be lollipops were permitted. There was I guess a negative perception about that in 2001. The city changed its policy and said no more lollipops, but they went too far and said it's got to be a 2001 Space Odyssey monolith only, right? And the reality is that there are very attractive, you can consider signs that way, like this one, that are somewhere in between the two, that communities could look at and say, you know, that, we wouldn't mind that in our community, whereas maybe we would mind a 50-foot lollipop, or maybe we wouldn't. The planning commission can kick that around, see what they can come up with. We'll look at examples from other communities.
I think Troutdale's got a perfect example. They have an elevated freeway with a frontage road with a bunch of shops right along that frontage road with elevated signs. Pretty much going to model what we're doing here. Yeah, takes right to it.
John? Do you have a-
Do we have, just out of curiosity, do we have regulations on the color of those monument signs?
No.
Okay.
Some communities do.
Right, right, I just, some people, I noticed some people that did those monument signs really did them in some outrageous colors, so. I just didn't know if that was just purposeful for making them do that, or
Could be.
it's just like the color they like, maybe, I don't know.
Attract attention.
Yeah, my last point, sorry, do we need to look at a larger, this is the other point. And this one is more specific to limited access highway signs. Do we need to look at a larger area allowance for these signs as opposed to what we currently allow? Current allowance is 1 square foot per lineal foot of frontage that you have. And so the idea is that you're getting a taller sign, should you be allowed a larger sign area within that? And so should we look at, 1.5 square feet or 2 square feet or something along those lines? That's kind of, you're getting a bigger sign, but you're still only going to be able to put 1 square foot per lineal foot. You may have a big sign, but it's a little tiny.
So I just have a question, a specific question about, say, the Black Pearl that won't have any frontage along Highway 14. But what's the current code if they wanted, because I noticed that the Parker House sign is gone.
Yep.
Right?
I don't know who took that out.
It took me a couple of times past there and I went, something is different about this.
Yeah.
But now what would they be able to
I
put
believe
in
they're
now?
beyond the 300 feet. I could be wrong, but if they are beyond that 300 feet, then they couldn't utilize a taller sign.
Huh.
Now, with right away in the frontage road, it may get closed.
So they're not a flag lot? They have an
They're
easement?
they're not. They actually have it's a right away. City right away.
Oh, that's
down to
the
2nd
street?
Yes. 2nd Street and A Street goes all the way down there.
So they have no way to get out onto the highway to have a sign?
Have a sign.
They don't?
Now, there may be some historical issues related to that with the one sign that they had out there, although they didn't raise that. In fact, they were thankful that it was gone.
Really?
But-
They didn't take that down?
No, but I believe it was removed by the state. I could be wrong on that,
Huh.
but that's where the frontage road is going to be going through there, so.
Are they asking for a sign out there?
They have not.
But they might.
They might.
They have-
They may try.
they have-
Again, that's an off-site sign.
They may be within, if the right-of-way includes the frontage road, they might be within 300 feet.
Does the frontage road come back to us? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to look at that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to inadvertently constrain unique situations, yet we don't want to, in an unbridled way, allow folks, that's the balancing act, so we'll have to be careful, but I
Yeah.
think we can pull it off.
Do we have a way to allow them, say they wanted to partner with Wesley Ford or someone who owns property on the frontage, to
Off-site
allow
sign.
them to put up, erect a sign like that?
No.
In conjunction with them, or is there?
That's what I'm talking about. We have to figure out a way to allow for appropriate and adequate advertising opportunities for those unique situations where everyone would agree it makes sense to do that without, in a way that regulates only time, place, and manner, and doesn't release
Special,
it's so that we get a mess everywhere else. So
Right.
we'll look at that very carefully.
And in this situation, it may just be, they may be within 300 feet, and we're having this discussion for not, but it may be that they may be that would be the, if you look at SR 14 as it moves through the city, that's kind of the only spot that's really restricted by, you can't go into the Columbia River, you know, there's not properties there that are gonna be advertising, so it's really just that narrow spot that we may have to, and maybe if we change the 300 feet, maybe it's 350 feet.
Right.
So
There you go.
Paul?
Where do we have, where is their highway commercial zoning?
Right now, the port has the property, both sides of Hamilton property. We're proposing Hamilton to go to highway commercial. We're proposing on the north side of C Street there, east of Third is highway commercial, and we're proposing that the west of Third goes to highway commercial.
Nobody knows what's going to happen to the Hamilton property and the 17 acres there, but highway commercial is probably what it's going to be zoned. But what actually gets built, maybe the solution here is to have a little different rules for signage in highway commercial than we have in other zones. Just a thought.
That's a vehicle that some communities use, that's a place,
Mhm.
time, place, and manner, yeah. But
I'll get to there. Garage sale signs, this was another one that Paul had brought up. Whether or not we need to make provisions for this in 1860 right now, on-site it's fine, off-site, they're off-site signs, we don't allow them. The Title 5.56 for garage sales actually says you can have them, but only in compliance with the other part of the code, which would be 1860, so therefore you couldn't have them. So there's some problems with that.
I think it's also limited to one a month.
Well, yeah, and the timing part of it is, I was just looking at it from the sign standpoint. You know, if we're gonna regulate how many garage sales you can have, that's outside this review. The other thing that I heard that at the hearing was that trendy, not spendy, should that fall under the garage sale, that kind of thing? And is there other things that we should throw into that group? I think it gets more of an overarching discussion on off-site signs. I really do. I think that by Title 5.56, the trendy, not spendy would not even meet any criteria in there related to garage sale if we wanted to try to make some sort of correlation between the two. It just doesn't, it wouldn't get there because it's on a property that's normally used for business. That's kind of one of the things that the 5.56 says. What's the other thing? It's normally in a residential district. There's a couple of, and I think it only allows a couple signs or something like that. And what they're talking about is much broader related to that. And I think that the trendies, not spendies, all the off-site, the Christmas tree farms is another one. You know, we've got a little bit of time that we can work that, but that's something else that we have to discuss. And again, I think it's more of a, you know, if if you guys want to talk about 5.56, that's up to you because that doesn't go back to Planning Commission. But you know, my recommendation is that if we want to have garage sales, we can group them in, but it's more the overarching off-site sign issue.
The other thing to keep in mind too is that sometimes communities use garage sale signage provisions as a surrogate for regulating garage sales in residences. Most communities don't really want to touch garage sales because it's just part of the fabric of our cultures. We have garage sales, tag sales, whatever they're called, and it's what happens. And most of us don't abuse that and set up a 365-day-a-year, 24/7, I'm exaggerating, garage sale. But you've seen properties where the garage sale is never ending. And that is harmful, and it can potentially be harmful in a neighborhood. And so one way to try to mitigate against that is to say, well, you can only have garage sale signs, you know, every other Thursday. You know, you try to regulate it by using signs as a surrogate, and that's what you find. I think most communities have a little bit of language around garage sale signs in their code, and then they really don't do much about it because you just don't want to get involved with it and hope that no one abuses it.
John?
Typical.
I got a hypothetical for you. If I were a company that bought gold and silver, and I
Not
was...
very hypothetical.
and I had just a temporary thing going on at the Best Western, and I was hiring people to go stand on the street corners with signs.
Exactly.
Is that in any way, I mean...
Actually,
how
during
do you deal with that?
during the
With
Planning
sign?
Commission discussion,
Did you
there
get a
was,
permit?
yeah, there was some discussion about whether or not we wanted to put human signs into the code. There is a lot of code that does talk about human signs and regulates it, but basically what Planning Commission came back to and said, no, we don't want to touch it. And typically they're standing in the right of way anyway, so.
Especially, I mean, if they're out of city businesses, that's what my concern,
Yeah.
you know.
Go ahead, Paul.
One other kind of thing to throw in amongst the garage sales is church rummage sales, which end up being another thing that you don't really want to regulate, but.
You get them with the high school. High school does them
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot too. So, I mean, again, I think it's one of those things that you have to look at off-site sign provisions and
Yeah,
how we deal with all of them.
and then the other thing about human signs is that you not only have the mattress factory or the gold kind of stuff, but at one point I had a restaurant that I was trying to advertise in Eugene, and the radio wasn't pulling, so I hired a college student to walk around with a sandwich sign, and it worked.
Electronic Message Center. This was another one that Paul brought up about whether or not, you know, how we want to regulate them. And currently our code defines them. It says that, you know, how big of a sign, a portion of the sign that it can be. And so the question that I really had after that, hearing that, is this something that we still want to allow, electronic message centers? And should the Planning Commission look at the standards in place and possibly modify? I mean, that's something that, you know, they've come a long way from the old, you know, date, time. Even the port one has scrolls things every now and then that you can see. And so the question is whether or not how far do we want to go with that?
John?
I actually rely on the port's information board when I'm driving by. Oh yeah, there's that going on. So I mean, it actually comes out very helpful.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, let me second that, and along with that, as my eyes get a little more tired or older, I frankly find the port sign too small to read a lot of the time. On the other hand, I do very much appreciate that it's monochrome. When I used to live at 12th and K, and I would come down E Street to make the left-hand turn onto 12th Street, that sign at Washougal Flowers is very distracting. It can literally dazzle you so that you cannot see an oncoming car. And that's more what I'm worried about. Lots of animation, lots of colors, and on E Street, it just seems to me that E Street is a different environment than SR 14.
Molly?
And that's just off the top of my head. I haven't really thought that through as issues.
Well, the high school has one, right? You would call that an EMC, Electronic
Yep.
Message Center. And I consider that really quite unobtrusive, and yet it has a lot of good information on it. So now I have a high school kid living at home, so I do pay attention to that. And that's not in a commercial area, and yet I find the use completely appropriate. So
Yep.
for me to have the planning, take that to the Planning Commission and have them look at that, I think that's a good idea.
Dave?
On E Street, that flower shop sign, with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is what I understand we're gonna have after we go to 2 lanes, I don't have a problem with that sign. In fact, I think it's a class act.
The interesting thing about that sign was that it was permitted under current code. At the time, I told them very specifically, when you apply for your sign, you need to make sure that you're specifying this as a electronic message center, because as opposed to an animated sign, which talks about, movement, bubbles, it talks about all kinds of things, but it says these are not to be confused with electronic message centers, which typically, put date, time, and temp. And so they applied for a electronic message center under our current code, and then it's somewhat morphed over that time into, but I mean, I hear what you're saying is that you're not necessarily opposed to that style and that type, and so, but under current code, that would not, the way that they're utilizing it now would not meet their current definition.
Michael?
So why wouldn't it meet the current code?
Well, let me go back to my notes here real quick. The definition of animated sign is any sign including banners, streamers, animated display boards, including video signs, pennants, and propellers of which any part thereof is designed to visibly move. Any sign which contains or uses illumination. Any lights or lighting devices which change color, flash, alternate, show movement or motion, or automatically change the appearance of the sign or any part thereof, including any audible noises, noise, smoke, emissions. Those are prohibited. Animated signs are prohibited. And then it says electronic message boards that flash time, date, and weather conditions are not considered to be animated signs. So that's really the only, what you get as a definition of electronic message center is the date, time, and weather. What they do is it's changing, moving, it doesn't meet that definition. It meets that definition of an animated sign, which is prohibited by our code.
Are public sector signs regulated, or are they exempt?
No, we would regulate them.
Okay. Because still unclear about the constitutionality of that, because it appears to be content-based, but I'm aware of many communities that exempt public sector signage from their sign code, other than the state building code around wind loads and making sure that it's safe. The notion being that the public sector is very self-regulating and isn't going to do something outrageous, right or wrong. That's the theory behind that. And so when you get EMCs, if you would, at schools or ports or city halls or utilities, they can kind of have public service announcements and do all those things. But the commercial speech, the non-public sector speech, might be more regulated. The provisions are generally around vehicular safety and distraction. And I think communities are beginning to evolve their sign regulations around EMCs because most of the provisions dated back to earlier versions. And now, frankly, signs are basically just giant monitors. They're just big LCD or LED or whatever monitors, and they could probably play HD video. And if you drive the I-5 corridor and you get up into past Fife and you start going up the hill, boom, boom, you get some pretty significant video signs, and I think most communities look at that and say, whoa, that's pretty
You know why that
intense.
sign's there, right?
What's that?
You know why that sign's there. It basically, the Indian reservation comes to that
Right,
corner.
there's a question of sovereignty.
Yes.
Right, and that's why it's exempt from state regs,
Yep.
but yeah, anyway.
Michael, I think you had your hand up.
Okay, so when we're talking about sending this particular part back to the planning commission, are we talking about allowing, because as I see it right now, Washougal Flowers couldn't be appropriately, they couldn't appropriately get a permit for their current sign.
Right.
And so my understanding is that from the discussion I've heard, sounds like most people want it to pretty much stay the same way it is. And so I'm kind of curious as to why the planning commission should be looking at this unless we want to start allowing that.
Paula just mentioned, made the notation that he didn't like the one down here. And I wanted to make sure that everybody in this room knew that that was permitted, but it was permitted as an electronic message center, and it's really gone beyond that.
So is it illegal now?
In theory, the practice of the way they're utilizing it is not in compliance with the code that they were approved on.
So
John?
if we desire.
If we desired, we could start a.
Make them change that.
Yes. The question too, sorry?
No.
Oh, I think the question too is that when you get to the freeway, if they're, under current code, they're allowed 30% of your sign area could be utilized for that. I think that's why the ports is so small, that's the provisions that they were under. Whether or not we want to allow those kind of types of signs along SR 14, and again, if we're talking size of signs, possibly getting bigger along through there, or do we want the electronic message centers to be larger? And do we want to take that next step to allow that? Dave and I had this conversation, there's a timing of movement, that it has to stay stationary for 15 seconds or something before it then shifts to the next thing. So you kind of get into those things that you could look at regulating if you chose to. And that's just kind of what I'm getting.
Before we get too far, much further along, I think John had another comment.
Just in regards to regulating the motion and stuff, what if you're a business and you have one of those motion monitors in your window instead of not out on the street, as we currently do with one of our businesses that is also a motion impediment? How do you regulate that if it's coming out of their business, out of their window?
Window
not
signs?
outside?
Do we regulate window signs? Or do we define them?
That may take too long in that authority. Yes, we do. That particular business showed up at this council almost a year ago, raising his concerns. He pretty much was granted a letter that said he's okay, and he's shown that to anybody and everybody that asks.
So I'm just saying there's more
yes, we tried to
complexity.
regulate that. We were told no.
Yeah, I'm saying there's more complexity to the issue than just whether or not it's that, because there's other things to consider. Because they may point, if we say you can't do this, they may point to that and say, well, it's the same thing. And so, something to consider.
Okay, the last, I think, really one that I want is, or talk about, is a different code for town center. This came up, I think John brought this up. Do we want to have different code sections that regulate different parts of the city? And, we talked a little bit, Paul made mention of it, and Dave mentioned that some of the municipalities for their highway commercial districts do different things. We could look at doing that. We have done that. Obviously, we have a separate section of code for the town center as opposed to every other commercial piece of property within the city. The question is that, why do we have that? And I think you go back to when the formation of the town center, we wanted to make that unique, rely more on design, which we have, and so the current code, the 1860 that we're talking about, doesn't apply to the town center. And the questions come up is whether or not we want to have one set of code criteria throughout the city as opposed to different designations.
John?
I guess the question is, are the businesses in the downtown happy with their code being different than the rest? And is it beneficial to them? I've heard a lot of comments from citizens that they're like, they don't even know what's in that building. Because there's no signage as if there were other businesses who had the building.
I will, if I can, note one thing is that the building down here, the tenant or the property owner has his own set of guidelines and regulations for signage that are independent of us. And so, well, we may approve something, he may not. And so that, I mean, and I think that that's what you get down here. And even the pizza place had some issues with some of the things that they want to do that they couldn't do, not because of us, but because of their landlord.
How will that, how does
And that's
having a
still within
separate
its
code,
right.
will that affect, if Pendleton decides to develop that parking lot, you know, how will that affect those businesses that go in there, because they would be under this downtown, right?
They'd be under the downtown, yeah. So then it's more design related. It's all design related. And that was the other thing that I wanted to point out about rooftop signs is that we have one at the coffee shop down in the corner, and that he's in the core, or he's in the town center. So there's not a prohibition against rooftop signs, and we looked at it from a design standpoint and said, you know what, it looks good, the kind of station feel to it. That's what that code talks about, innovative, unique design, and we said, yeah, fine. So.
Go ahead, Tom.
Short answer is, yes, I think we should have different code for different zoning or downtown or.
Yeah, furthermore, I think it gives us just a bit of a trial area. So we'll see how it works down there, and as East Street continues to develop, you know, over the next few years, we may want to extend that into the East Street corridor. But let's take a look and see how it works in our downtown.
It's very much design related as opposed to. Those were the things that I heard throughout all this. Is there anything else from City Council related to that I should possibly take back to Planning Commission?
John?
I just want to reiterate what I said earlier, but we would really like to see the Planning Commission, as much as possible, try to implement more the ability for businesses to self-regulate, self-govern, rather than having a mound of restrictions on what they can and cannot do, cost.
So it's next. I hope if, with City Council permission, that we'll bring the amendments back on the 7th. Again, we'll just reference Exhibit I. And I've kind of heard some of the discussion related to political sign, but I mean, that would be my motion, and then if it wants to modify it or in some way, shape, or form. But that's my desire, is to get, it's really, you know, to get those provisions in place that kind of the business community is saying related to temporary signs, that we can get those provisions in place for them in order to move forward. And so, and you know, a lot of the other changes that we've made related to site preference and kind of wordsmithing it, I think, pretty straightforward. But, and then staff will start with the Planning Commission on the stated next steps. But so, and Michael, the first one is, I'd like to bring this back on the 7th. And so with just Exhibit I, so everybody's on the same page.
John?
Where did the restrictions on the political signs generate? Where did that come from?
It came from Planning Commission. Actually, it came out of the, when it came back, when it got sent back to Planning Commission, when council sent it back for the legal review, that was one of the things that came up, was that it was something that they could look at, and that we could say that, yes, you know, we can't say no signs, but we can say one per, you know, candidate or issue.
I'm saying, did it originate though from staff? Did you guys bring it to them and say, to look at this, think of this?
I can't say no. I don't recall just, you know, pulling that one out and writing that language, but I think it was just part of the discussion, and I made that change.
So it came from the attorney that did the review for us as a suggestion?
It came from the review from Camus. It was one of the things that their attorney had looked at and said that while you can't regulate these things, you could, case law says that you could look at that. Although it hasn't been tried either. So I mean, if it was one of those things that came up, I think it's more comfort level of council. You know, is that something that we want to step into or not? I know how you feel, John.
Anyone else want to care to comment on this while we're back at the subject?
Hopefully very straightforward on Monday night. Any other questions?
Would you like us to email out that spreadsheet?
Yeah.
The last time you had it, it didn't have the color coding. It'll help, we won't print it out to try to save, but we'll email it out if you want to peruse it over the course of the next week. The pink, I think it was the color, the pink items are things that, where there actually is some policy that's changing in the code. It's coming from the planning commission or staff, and constituents are desiring it. If it's gray shaded, it's reflective of exhibits G and H, and it's so noted. If it's unshaded, it's staff's opinion that it's just bookkeeping, reformatting, or minor types of changes that really aren't of substance and have no policy implications. So you can focus yourself on really on the pink items, and so you know what's happening. One of those pink items is the further regulation on political speech. If that comes out, it can come out, and our recommendation will be to move Exhibit I. We've got a list of a number of different items around the sign code. As you can see, they all get interrelated. Originally, the list was kind of off-site signs. I think the question will be, this menu of issues to be looked at has started to get fairly complex and could take quite some time. And I'm wondering if there aren't really two more steps. There's the immediate constituent concern around the off-sites, and then there's some of these other provisions which have merit to review, and maybe we should try to tackle the off-sites.
That's a good.
Bring that back, and then continue on, allow the planning commission to continue on with the others.
Michael?
I have a thought to bring forward on that. It might be possible, if we're going to throw it all back at the planning commission, to ask them to tackle them separately, so that when the off-site signs come back to us, it's just that, and we don't have to worry about that and other things. Because well, there, as you say, it is complex stuff. So if we could just sort of keep it subject specific, that would be great for each review. It might make it easier.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree. It's easier to deal with in nibbles than it is in a whole plateful.
The only comment I guess I'll make to that is that I understand, and I think it's something that we can accommodate City Council with. My hope would be that we, as Planning Commission, can look at everything collectively, because then I'm only processing it once. I'm doing one, notice of application. I'm doing one SEPA checklist and sending it out to agencies, and they're all commenting on it. And then I can break it up from that point, giving it to you in separate, smaller chunks.
I would just say furthermore, I think since I know you mentioned off-site signage as being kind of snips throughout the code, and to actually change that, and then change our code, and then do one more piece, and then change the code. I mean, you'd have a list of code changes that would be an arm and a leg long by the time you ended. But I kind of like that, the one SEPA and the one distribution, and then bust it for Planning Commission into its components.
Yeah, well, I'll end up busting it after Planning Commission.
Okay.
Because I have to have the SEPA before I can. Well, I guess I could bust it up for them too, but you get what I'm trying to say. I only want to do one notice and one SEPA for it, and I'll work from there.
I understand.
3 minutes.
Great.
3 minutes.
Any other questions or comments for Mitch at this time? All right, excellent. Let's move along. Ms. Jennifer, finance discussion, iPad.
And I have one extra item. It's a housekeeping item that I'm gonna pass out first. If you don't mind. And it's on the 18th of January, the council passed ordinance 1686, increasing the community room rental fees and the cleaning deposit. So we were looking at the actual code, and it kind of contradicts itself. And so we just want to do a little bit of wordsmithing to clean it up, to ensure that we're not keeping cleaning deposits for extended periods of time. We have a couple of folks that rent the room repeatedly, and we don't want to keep holding that $150 cleaning deposit or whatever. So we just felt there was a little bit of clarification And we also wanted to get rid of category 3 because we've realized that it doesn't apply. We don't have anybody utilizing category 3.
So like the Weight Watchers or something that's not category 3?
Apparently.
Wow, they've been there for years.
So I'm not sure they would be, they might fall under category 1 for IRS recognized is Weight Watchers not nonprofit?
I don't know.
No?
It's a business.
No, it's
I don't
definitely
think so.
for-profit.
So I'm not sure about Weight Watchers, but from what I was told today, but I will find out for Monday and get more. We just wanted to get the information to you for your perusal. I'll have a better understanding for category 3.
Okay.
And then the iPads, I don't have PowerPoint, I apologize. But what I wanted to do was hopefully get concurrence or occasional head nods that moving forward with the iPad purchase is something that you're interested in and that you would be willing to seriously consider that based on the outcome of the pilot program, which we were thinking would be the mayor, Dave, myself, and then 2 to 3 council members.
I'd say that
John?
I miss my monitor up there. So, I know that it's not an iPad, but I did appreciate having it right in front of me and not having to
Right.
be looking up here, I can
Or-
hardly see the screen, so.
Flip through page after
Secret vote.
But I did take the mayor's suggestion and I called the Apple Government Affairs Division to see if they would donate or if they had a discount program for pilot programs. And Apple does not do that directly. They referred me to a different company, and he gave me a quote, but there's no discount really on it. So I did a quick Google search and Walmart actually has them cheaper.
Really? Really?
Than they offered.
I thought they were all price regulated, Apple. Oh, I guess not, sorry.
They must have a contract.
Not with
Yeah.
Walmart.
They have a contract.
And then our IT department, I've been working with them as well. They said that March 2nd, which is 2 days away, or a day and a half or so, they're coming out with a new iPad. And so they were suggesting that we hold off till at least after the 2nd and then see what that does to the old models, if it decreases it, or if you get the old price and get the new machine, or how that's gonna work. So,
How much are
they're roughly 408. Walmart is 488, on their online special. So that's 20, for 5, that would be 24.40 plus tax.
And
then
that's for like the smallest, what is it, 8 gig? Is
The
that
16.
16 with no GSM, right?
Correct, it would be
Which
Wi-Fi
would be
only.
fine.
Because then we would have to pay for any 3G plans or whatever
Right.
if we put those on here, but there's free Wi-Fi in here.
One thing that we were looking at potentially for the ones that are for the staff, the city's currently paying for me to have a BlackBerry device. So there's the monthly access fee and then the data usage fee. And we're gonna take a look at what cost differential there would be to not do that with AT&T and do the GSM, or whatever that's called, with this device, and it would replace the BlackBerry for a staff person. And if it's cheaper, then it would be the way to go.
Does that mean you'd have to carry it around, like
Yeah.
in a holster?
It wouldn't be my phone, I use my personal Verizon phone. I donate to this, basically I use it for all my calls and everything. The only reason that I use the BlackBerry for really is when I'm not in the office, which is quite frequently at meetings. I have access to email so I can stay in touch with the team. Mitch is very savvy with that device.
Yeah.
And
I'm amazed.
basically, you show up at a meeting, everyone whips out their BlackBerry or their iTouch. And it's like, okay, when can you meet next? Well, everyone's doing that. I got my BlackBerry. Mitch has it right there on his iPad. And if they have Wi-Fi there, he could get at it. But if they don't, if you're at a meeting where they don't have Wi-Fi or you don't have access to their Wi-Fi, if you have the GSM, then you could get at it And there is some notion that this device actually could replace what's on our desktops, because you can have peripherals that would attach in terms of a monitor, and if there's enough computing power in that, or at least the ability to get into the networks where you get what you need, this could be cost savings just in terms of when we start to replace out staff's computer device. There's just a lot of intriguing possibilities. And really, what we're looking for, what Jen has come up with is a way that within the current budget that we have, without having to ask for more money than you have currently appropriated in the various line items, we can accommodate this expenditure. It's just kind of an adjustment. Certainly, those payables would come through the Finance Committee, but
Is there somebody out there?
Yes.
Thanks, Dan.
Hmm?
And I bought mine, just so anybody wants.
What we're looking for from the council is, would you like us to do a pilot? And the idea behind it is, if the pilot is successful, we'll deploy in this way for the entire council.
John?
I think any advancements you can make in technology that are cost effective, not only just immediately, but in the long run, I think is going to be beneficial for all of us. I can't see us using
I
this
know.
in about another 10
Yeah.
years, so, or 5 years. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's not cost effective.
And yet, there is something to be said for a piece of paper, because I take an agenda bill, and I take another agenda bill, and I take another agenda bill, and I can look at all three very easily, make notations very, very quickly. It gets a little bit more complicated and a little more, well, I mean, let's put it this way. You start relying on different skills, and I don't trust it yet for this type of review. I certainly can understand the importance of it for decided policy, just a reference manual, then it's great. When you were actually creating and tweaking and whatnot, to me, it doesn't really blend, well, I can understand if it's just outstanding as far as the cost savings are concerned, but I'm kind of doubtful as to whether or not it's really going to be better for us in the long run. Just my personal opinion. I like paper.
Malik, did you have something to say?
Well, I think Mitch has some experience he could share about that. But
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is that you're right, it's a totally different skill set, and it's a matter of you're flipping on a page back and forth between those documents, and so you kind of lose that. The part that I really like about it is that, because I'm very visual, I can see something on a page, and I remember, oh, it's there on the lower right-hand corner. And I could still do that with this, as opposed to other electronic, like when I'm looking at the code electronically, it's just running pages, and I can't get it down. I still go back to my hardcover book because I know where it is on the certain page. So, but you're right, it is a shift to try to, but I can still annotate and, and underline, strike out, do those kind of different things with it.
And it's not just with a keypad. You can
No.
use a pen-like device.
Yeah, I use my finger right
Do those
now.
come with stylus? Or you have a
No,
stylus?
no.
$15.
Steve Jobs would scream if you had
Yeah.
a stylus. He
So
does
how do
not
you,
like
how do
that.
you make, I'm sorry, this is another, I won't get into it, but how
My
do you-
finger.
You can write with your finger?
Yes, I
Oh,
can.
yeah.
Really? You see, we've got one of those notepads where you have the stylus still,
Yeah.
the flip screens.
You're saying for $15 we can get stylus?
That's what
Yeah.
Ivy said.
Yeah, I've tried them. I haven't found one that I like yet.
Purist is saying not to go with the stylus, but you can get
My
one.
finger does the same thing, but yes, you can.
They're little fingertip styli also, as well as things that look like pens.
And I suppose, if we try out the pilot and it's successful, I don't know that there's any requirement that any individual member of the council deploy in that way. And I don't know that the council could compel a member to do that, really. I mean, I think and we can accommodate that. You know,
I wanted to say one thing. We might need to look at a policy change for our meetings if we open it up to electronic devices, because I believe there is some policy that prohibits electronic devices at city council meetings.
in your own policy.
I think there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the idea is that you're engaged in the meeting and not in other business.
Right,
That's
right,
the
right. I know that we've had comments from some citizens and public comments talking about, well, we want to make sure you're doing the city's business and not reading the newspaper and you know, surfing the internet and doing other things, you know, while you're sitting at this table or at the lecterns. Paul?
Also, Jen, if you would ask whatever legal beagle is our public records guru, the question would be, if I have this in front of me in a meeting and I take notes, do those notes now become a public record? In which case, we have to be able to download that stuff back into the server.
Molly?
Well, but on paper, if I take notes on this, is that a public record?
I think as a technical issue, it is.
So technically, I should scan this and send it back to the city? I mean,
With that type of stuff, it's de minimis isn't the right terminology, but there's different guidelines for different documents. So handwritten notes probably has a retention value until they're no longer useful. So you write your notes, then you remember it, and it gets started later.
But in addition, I do think the policy change should just say that, you know, that any correspondence between, say, council members and public during a public meeting becomes public record. So
We will investigate, thank you for bringing that up, we'll investigate all of the policy implications, whether it's our own council policies or statutory or AG type stuff around public records and disclosure, to make sure that we don't open ourselves up to some other can of worms and we say, never mind, but it's too late, you know, we'll look into that.
John?
And this is an area I'd really like to get some clarity on, because I'm a part of a group there's some other people, other friends of mine that are around the nation that are elected officials, and many of us like to Twitter what's going on in the meetings, so the public knows what's going on. And I should have that ability and that right to be able to do that during a meeting if I want to. And so that's one thing I would like some clarification on. It's just a way to communicate to the outside what's going on the inside. So,
And I think there's beginning to be a body of information at the state level around that type of issue, social media, and the wiredness of our society, and public records, open public meetings. I think there's a whole lot of information there that we can try to roll up and get some guidance on, so that you can take advantage of what society's offering now, but still be compliant.
Any other comments? Paul?
Just along those lines, John, I did take a seminar at one of the AWC annuals on OPMA and open records, and from one of the attorneys at Foster Pepper, and to speak it in French, he scared the hell out of me in terms of using Facebook, Twitter, blogging, anything like that in terms of both of those. Now, I assume things have evolved since then. It was a couple of years ago. But he basically said, don't do it.
yeah. To me, it's a media, and I'm not putting anything on Twitter that I wouldn't have anyone else read here. And to me, it's an issue of open government. It's the ability for me to communicate with the outside world of what's going on in here. And not saying I have a big fan base, but there are people from Washougal who read those Twitters.
Well,
And so,
the case that he gave that was especially scary is that the court said that there was an open public meeting violation when a quorum of council members wrote letters to the editor which were published in their paper of record, and that was an illegal serial meeting.
Right.
That's mind-blowing.
Right. I'm trying to figure out where that fits into,
Well,
not
the-
just reporting what just took place over the media. I'm not talking about something that might happen, something
No,
that just happened.
I understand, but just, at the time, it was, his recommendation was that that case is so scary that you shouldn't go there.
Check it out.
Okay, yeah. So Dave, you're gonna come back to us with some
Yeah, we'll
rules
do
and
s-
regs and possible
Right.
code changes we have to look at?
Yeah, and it scoped a little bit to, not just, what about these iPads and what are the implications of the iPads? I think that there's some just implications around technology and the use of technology and, how do you use it? And how do you do it in a way that's compliant, but can still avail yourselves of it? You know, I remember there's some House members at the federal government level of Twitter. It's, so the notion, I think the notion's out there in terms of our political system, and it's changing so rapidly that, and then our sense of democracy and openness tries to catch up and figure out how to deal with those things. It's very, very interesting. So we'll report back and give you the latest that the folks that tell us how to do these things at the state level. And to the extent that there may be some risk associated with it, I think WCIA has some input about whether or not you should do this or that if you want to be under their umbrella. And that's a kind of a different animal than what the statute might say. So that'll take us a little while, I think, but we'll look at the iPads specifically first so that we can decide whether we're going to move forward with that or not.
Okay, great. Moving along, we have one final item here, and then we have some updates. Public comment time.
I
No
have an
one-
email
Oh,
to read.
pardon me.
Sorry, I forgot to jump in earlier. It's from Sheena Frentos.
Oh, yes.
From, I don't know how to say it, Sheena F. from Edward Jones. And it's to the mayor. So, hello Sean, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure of meeting you a few weeks ago at the city council meeting. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting, so I'm hoping my email can be a voice heard tonight from a local business in our community. To my understanding, the city has adopted a $25 fee, signs, banners, which currently is only good on a monthly basis. To most of the business owners I've spoken with, it would seem fair to have a $25 annual fee, which we should be able to use as often as we want within that 1 year period. Not for 30, 60, or 90 days, etc., but for 1 full year. In regards to being citywide, i.e. downtown, this would be fair for approved banners for sidewalks, windows, or buildings that fall under the sign codes for the downtown area. I understand that there is more to this topic than I'm discussing, but I do hope that we will be able to incorporate something that is good for the city and for the local businesses that support the city. Sincerely, Sheena. So I can forward the email to council as well, but the mayor asked that I read that in at public comment.
Excellent. Okay. Any other, well, there's no members of the public left. Dawn? All right. Moving on, updates and discussion items, mayor's comments. I have none. City Administrator Dave?
We have something, I guess it's on behalf of the mayor, about our audit. And I'll pass this, I'm sorry.
Better do that.
Pass that around. Jen, if you want to kind of take the lead, I'd like to say that the title on top of this, we're very, very pleased to report, says Washougal receives clean audit. And that is outstanding news. And it is for fiscal year 2009, and it's the state auditor's annual accountability audit. There were no findings, and that is the definition of a clean audit. And so we're pleased to report that. This is a note to you and to the community from Sean, reporting that. There are some details. Even in a clean audit, the auditor can point out some some minor issues, make recommendations, and we're always thankful for that. The auditor indeed has done that. If you have any questions about what those specifics are, Jen could answer those. We're already actually working on some of those. I think another very important thing that they mentioned in the audit is all the issues that have come up in the previous one, they have closed from the state auditor's perspective. So everything that the city has done in terms of responding to those issues, as far as the auditor is concerned, we have addressed them. So that combined with the clean audit, I think is an outstanding news for the community.
Great.
I don't have anything else to
Dave?
I think we got a lot fairer shake this time than we did for the last one.
Yeah, definitely.
My only heartburn on this is that Marissa Harshman will no longer be able to write on us.
That's right.
She's moved on.
Yes, she is.
So we'll have a new writer to write up our new auditor.
Right. We need to, we have a new journalist to meet.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the person, but yeah, Marissa will be writing about health issues in the community, and apparently she volunteered for that. So we must have been too boring. I don't know.
There you go.
You have to give it to Dawn that she's here every meeting at least.
Yeah.
I don't even know. His name is Ray Legendre. Legendre? Something like that. Legendre. Legendre.
I think it said his first day is today.
That's right. And he's not here. Okay. Anything else, Dave? Great.
I have nothing else.
Moving on, council comments? Go ahead, John.
I don't know how the council wants to proceed on this. I know how we've done it in the past. I don't know if there's code on it or how we work on it, but we have $6,000 set aside for training, for AWC training. I have a conference that I would like to go to, if it is okay with the council. It's a Partners in Emergency Preparedness Conference, which is going to be in Tacoma. And it is April 26th through 27th. Usually how we've done it in the past is the council brings us forward and we vote on sending however many members. I don't know if that's just tradition or if that's the way to do it. The only reason I mention that is tomorrow is the deadline for the cheaper price. So.
What is the price?
Did you look at
I think
that?
it was $250.
Yeah.
It's $250 for the conference, and that's $75 cheaper than the next deadline.
Well, where is it again?
It's in Tacoma.
Tacoma. So you need overnight?
Yes.
Well, again, secret vote.
So it might be $500 with hotel, mileage, meals, and $250.
How do we sit budget-wise? It's only
There's-
February, it's like-
Right, there hasn't been any expenditures out of that line item yet,
I
or
mean,
those travel line
It
items.
is within our budget, and I think really the reason that we've kind of done it, at council meetings is just so that we're all aware of what the opportunities are and who, so that we can invite people to participate. So I don't see that there's a necessity to vote.
And one of the reasons, and I'll bring this up, is that, so there's transparency. I'm working towards my certification in emergency management. And this will help me in that regard because you actually get credits towards that for going. So.
Are you on the public safety
Yes.
committee?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was going to mention that,
That's-
public safety committee, there's a nexus.
Seems reasonable.
So I mean, no vote, but if there's anybody has any heartburn about it, then speak up.
We just won't approve it in finance committee. No, I'm just kidding.
So we have $6,000 appropriated for council training, if you would, and there's 7 council members, so it's just under $1,000. If you do it on a per council member basis, there's just under $1,000 for your continued development as council members in terms of training. Would you like the staff to make you aware of training opportunities, or do you want to beat the bushes yourselves? I mean, I haven't thought about doing that, and I apologize, just in terms of making opportunities available to you.
I think it's nice. I know Jeanette has sent out several opportunities, you know, that might not fit my schedule or needs, but it is nice to know, because I don't always get all that information about what's up.
Right. You know, and maybe we'll try to do it in some automated way if we can get you on some emailing lists or different things. If you do. To your city efforts.
And it's really easy to find us on the AWC website, it's a calendar, and it has all of them for the year, you can go through and just look at them. So,
Paul?
Actually, go ahead. I was just going to say that I'm probably a member of 20 different LinkedIn groups and all kinds of other stuff. And so if people are interested, I can forward those kinds of things to you as emails, much like Jennifer does the Colombian stories. I hadn't done that because I thought most people would think it cluttered their lives, but if anyone's interested, let me know and I can start forwarding that kind of stuff.
if you have anything on business or public safety, feel free to.
Anything on?
Business or public safety, feel free to send them.
Okay.
Molly?
I'm going to make this quick because it's late and I have a headache, frankly. But you may have gotten this already, but the farmers market folks would like to be able to just like jump in 100% and proceed with the next farmers market for 2011. They're asking for actually less than what they asked for last year. They won't have to ask for a street closure. They're going to start the market a few weeks later, actually, and extend it out. I think other than that, the terms are going to be the same. So they would like by resolution or something, support or approval, or I don't know what the word technically would be, but they just want to make sure that we are not going to jump in at the last second and say we changed our minds.
John?
Should we bring forward the resolution we did last year?
Yes.
That was well worded.
Yeah, they would
Yes.
be very happy with that. Mhm. I was looking for it today and I just couldn't find it.
I've got it.
Okay,
We'll dig it up and get it in front of you.
great. Paul, sorry?
I'm sorry, I just had one other thing, actually two. Last Friday, went to the Clark County Growing Healthier Communities Symposium. It was, can't remember whether it was free or whether it cost $25.
No, it was free.
It was free?
Yeah.
But it was a great symposium, and very, very interesting. Bill Barron led the discussion afterwards. On March 4th at WSUV, as one of the chancellor's lunchtime lectures, there will be Economic Recovery in Southwest Washington, presented by Scott Bailey, who's the regional economist for Washington State Employment Security Department. He's been the regional economist for Southwest Washington for many years and has great insights into what's going on here in our region. And also John Knopfsinger from WSU Pullman will share his research on psychological biases, emotions, societal influences that shape our financial decisions and therefore the economy. It's $25 a ticket and it includes lunch. That's it.
Michael? Dave? John? And I don't have anything either, so. Great, I'd say we're adjourned we are adjourned at 8:38.
At 5:49.
Yeah. In Hawaii time.
Trevor. Really? I've waited hours.